Part 15. We've traveled through Tokyo, who still wants to simulate love? Author, Fei Se Hui-Xiang. Chapter 146. The third day of the cultural festival came quietly. Although there were a lot of twists and turns yesterday, at least Rina and Uman's story about Asaba Kazuma having a pair of wings has not been exposed yet. Coupled with the fact that he and Ishihara Rina slept together last night, Asahi Kazuma had a rare good dream. In the dream, he held Rina Ishihara with his left hand and Kane Shiina with his right hand, smiling like a fool. Then he woke up. Today is the last day of the cultural festival, and he has a lot of work to finish. First, regarding the class cultural festival activities, there are some follow-up matters related to the cooperation with Weekly Shonen Jump, such as the transportation of display boards, etc., which need to be contacted in advance, and it may be inevitable to organize the classroom. The second is the story of him and Shiina Kane, which started 50 times at the bonfire party on the last day of the cultural festival. He wanted to continue the agreement between the two of them in the love simulation and made a promise to dance every year. This is his promise. Although Shiina Uman didn't know about this. At noon that day, Asaba Kazuma was walking around in their class's theme cafe. Tables of guests were looking at him expectantly. Today, Asaba Kazuma did not wear deacon clothes, but just changed into daily loose clothes. The young face is filled with a smile that makes people feel warm at first sight. Today he will give some special customers a perfect ending. The decoration of the themed cafe for this event includes comic cards imitating the works of Shonen Jump hung on ropes, half-person high posters, signboards of his works, including Jump, Denjiki Bunko, and Faishi Entertainment, and even brochures and the like were all designed by Asaba Kazuma. In fact, from the first day, these things have been quite popular with some fans who have come over. As a souvenir for ordering at the themed cafe, the standing cards were almost sold out, forcing Asaba Kazuma to ask a partner from Jump to urgently make another one and deliver a batch. The posters and the comic cards he designed with board drawings are so beautiful that some customers secretly pick them off and take them away. Fortunately, in order for the theme cafe to proceed smoothly, he made an extra batch to ensure that the theme cafe would not have an embarrassing situation without a theme. The monitor of the second-year special class looked at Kinha Kazuma with emotion and said, "Asahi-san's popularity is really more amazing than we imagined." Kinha Kazuma smiled calmly and said, "It's the fans who give me more face." The squad leader shook his head and said, "Anyway, it helped a lot this time, and it even saved a lot of time in sorting it out later." Asahi Kazuma nodded. He had previously mentioned to the class that starting from the morning of the third day, users who came to participate in the themed cafe could take some of their decorative products directly from the cafe. For example, comics, cardboard, character posters, etc. Rather than letting some fans take it away secretly, it is better to take it out openly and treat it as a benefit for customers to come and spend. In this way, they can gain a good reputation and have some publicity effect. More importantly, they can save a lot of effort when cleaning up the materials afterwards. Because many of the supplies that needed to be cleaned were taken away directly by customers as souvenirs. Anyone who has done campus recruitment knows that there are two different things between having a company like 51 Job assist with recruitment and doing campus recruitment independently from start to finish. Asahi Kazuma's is even more amazing. Fame and convenience, he wants them all. At this time, another customer asked for a certain theme dress, and also hoped that Asaba Kazuma could sign the poster. Qian Yufengjian walked over to him and finished writing. While writing, I communicated with customers who were satisfied and ready to leave. Well, thank you very much for liking my work. I hope you don't dislike this little valuable gift. Is it enough to sign here? Well, I'm honored that everyone likes the animation. Yes, we have officially reached a cooperation with FI's Entertainment. Please help me with the voting for the cultural festival in the future. When the customer left with a smile on his face, a girl in the class joked, "Asian you really don't give other classes a chance." Chien Kazuma smiled and said, "What do you mean by not giving them a chance? This is to serve my customers thoughtfully." There was another low laugh. Originally, during this cultural festival, their class relied on its unique advantages to basically stabilize the best event in this year's cultural festival, and the possibility of being overturned was extremely low. Who would have thought that under such circumstances, Asahi Kazuma would talk to the customers more? This is the last possibility to directly block the activities of other classes. However, the purpose of Asahi Kazuma coming here this morning was to sign various posters and comic cards, so after accompanying a few early customers, he turned around and left. He has already arranged the follow-up docking matters, and the rest is left to the people in the class to handle. At noon, Asahi Kazuma leaned in the corner of the playground and drank tea slowly. He took a long breath and sighed, "Time flies so fast." Shiina Kane, who was sitting next to him, smiled and said, "There are not many days left in school." Of course, she was not talking about Asahi Kazuma, but herself. Japan's high school system is different from that of Daxia. Their graduation season is not in July, but in March of the following year. And there are not 2 semesters a year, but 3 semesters. This is why the cultural festival is held in October and why Shiina Kane can still stay in school. After the cultural festival, third-year students like Shiina Kane will enter the most intense sprint stage, which will not end until the results are released in March next year and the country is determined. "Shiina-senpai, are you reluctant to let go?" Asahi Kazuma said with a chuckle. Shiina Kane nodded, "It won't be so easy to see you after leaving school." As he said this, Qian Yufengjian's body moved slightly. He silently took a rice ball from the lunchbox Shiina Yuan placed on his lap and ate it slowly. Just as Asahi Kazuma has no work today, the vocal club managed by Shiina Yuan no longer needs her to keep an eye on it. The two enjoyed a rare break on the playground. In the distance, people from a sports club were running on the playground. It seemed that even during a large-scale student carnival like the cultural festival, some people did not stop exercising. Shiina Kane pointed at the students who were running and said, "The sports festival is coming soon, and counting the competitions at the end of the year and the beginning of next year, these students who specialize in sports will have no way to rest during this time. Just like it is a cultural festival but has basically nothing to do with third-year students, sometimes things full of happy memories are missed due to some force majeure. I don't want to miss out, I choose to have them all." Her voice was very gentle, but also revealed a firmness. "In fact, my wife Qianyu is not the kind of person with an extremely gentle personality, and can even be said to be a bit arrogant. As a girl who has been treated like a little princess since she was a child, she doesn't have a bad personality, but she is always proud in her heart. She can express her affection directly, but when it comes out of her mouth, it doesn't seem to mean exactly what she means. If not, in the love simulation, Asahi Kazuma wouldn't have waited until the last simulation to figure out the truth that she had noticed him a long time ago. But now, having gotten to know the girl, he could easily understand what she meant. Just like I didn't want to miss the cultural festival, so I chose to be recommended to Tokyo University, in the last period of high school, I don't want to miss you even more. There is an unspeakable sweetness in the strength, which is one of the charms of Shiina Uman. So he wanted to bully her even more. He blinked, laughed, and said in a low voice, "Senior, what I said is that there are not many students who have played longer than us at the cultural festival. If this is not considered a miss, all the sports students on this playground will have to cry." Shiina Kane pursed her lips and said coquettishly, "Is this the only thing you want to say?" Asahi Kazuma deliberately showed a strange expression and said, "Besides this, is there anything else?" Shiina Yuan closed the lunchbox quietly. "I mean, if you don't tell me, there will be no lunch today." "Yes, the shameless Asaba Kazuma doesn't even bother to bring lunch now, and basically just eats and drinks with Shiina Yuine. During the day and night, I enjoyed breakfast and dinner cooked by Ishihara Rina. At noon, I drank tea brewed by Shiina Kane and ate the 3-layer lunchbox she brought. Asaba Kazuma stretched out his hand and wiped it from the corner of Shiina Kane's mouth. There was a grain of rice on his finger, which he put directly into his mouth and ate it. Shiina Kane's face turned red. Big scoundrel. She patted Kinya Kazuma's leg hard, and Kinya Kazuma smiled and did not complain about pain. With Shiina Yuine's current strength, against herself with 10 points of physical strength, it cannot be said that there is no threat, it can be said that it is flirting. If this were done in my own apartment, if I hit him a few more times, I'm afraid it will turn into a gangster's excitement punch. After arriving at the University of Tokyo, we will be far away from home. Do we want to rent a house then? Asaba Kazuma asked with a smile. Shiina Kane's face was still rosy. When she heard him say this, she couldn't help but think of him and her renting outside with him in the dream memory. That expression is really heartwarming. Kinya Kazuma paused for a moment, then kissed her directly without hesitation. Shiina Yuine struggled for a moment, then stopped quickly, her mind becoming a little confused. Sure enough, it's still different from the feeling in the dream memory. This kind of touch. When Qi and Yufengjian slowly separated, her eyes had already revealed a bit of coquettishness due to confusion. It's exactly what I thought, Qi and Yufengjian chuckled, it still tastes better this way. This time, Shiina Kane no longer got angry and used the gangster's exciting punch, and even became a little cute. This sudden attack really caught her off guard. She muttered, I thought the kiss could be more romantic. Why, stop pretending, Kinya Kazuma chuckled, but senior sister tastes really good, this is really not a lie. Shiina Uman was shy and hard to express, but the emotion in her eyes became more intense. Kinya Kazuma chuckled. Girls still like to be praised. For example, when the relationship between the two has progressed, this kind of compliment with a little color will not only not be disliked, but also allow you to see the shyer side of the girl. Of course, if you do this before the relationship has reached that stage, then even if you are slapped and called a scumbag, that is normal. Although Shiina Kane always said that she didn't like the violin and never mentioned that she was the first in her grade, the fact was that Asaba Kazuma knew that these things formed a part of her life. Her character and her pride also come from this. Well, so does her appearance. So she can joke that she is the ugliest in the family, she can say that Hoken Toda is just like that, she can say that she doesn't like the violin, provided that she is the one who says this. Many people don't understand this point of view when communicating with girls, no, with outsiders, so that sometimes people don't know when they get into trouble for no reason. But Asaba Kazuma wouldn't. He bluntly told Shiina Kane that he liked her like this. Although he didn't say it directly in words, he expressed it in actions. She has always been someone who has the courage to express her emotions. Coincidentally, Asaba Kazuma is also an activist. After a while, Shiina Kane obediently opened the lunch box. Even the act of feeding Asaba Kazuma was even more affectionate. After lunch, the two walked around the playground. Not long after, a classmate from Shiina Kane came to call her, saying that the teacher had something to ask her. She glanced at Kinya Kazuma reluctantly and whispered, I'll be back soon. Asayu Kazuma nodded, and then he lay down on the playground lawn, closed his eyes and took a nap. Not long after, his ears moved slightly and he opened his eyes. I don't know when, the movement on the playground basically disappeared, leaving only a few footsteps. He stood up, patted his clothes, looked at the playground, and found that all the sports students on the playground were gone. In the empty field in the distance, only a few people in black suits were left standing near the starting line in the distance. There are still some people scattered around. When Asaba Kazuma glanced at them, he noticed that the man in a black suit closest to him had a vigilant expression on his face. "What's the situation?" Asahi Kazuma rubbed the center of his eyebrows, and then took a closer look, and soon saw a girl running on the playground at an incredibly fast speed compared to ordinary girls. It was a bit far away and he couldn't see clearly. But when the girl ran half a circle and got closer to his location, he finally saw the girl's face clearly. "Huh? Isn't this Miss Amamiya Mai?" Asahi Kazuma glanced around. I was amazed for a moment. Those who knew about this battle knew it was the youngest daughter of the consortium family, but those who didn't knew thought it was the scene where the famous sword of Kiri shocked the world. It can only be said that it is Japan under the shadow of conglomerates and big landowners of the old era. Kinya Kazuma got up and walked outside. There was no fluctuation in his heart. Because he knows that it won't be long before he can shout he can take his place. Hate the consortium, envy the consortium, understand the consortium, and then become the consortium. We need to speed up development. Calculating the time, there should be some movement on nature. We've traveled through Tokyo, who still wants to simulate love? Author, Fei Se Hui-Xiang. Chapter 147. Just as Asahi Kazuma was thinking about how to speed up his career next, he suddenly heard footsteps coming from behind him. Before he could think about it, he heard a sweet female voice. "Asian you, we are classmates after all. We won't turn around and leave after meeting you." The speaker was Amamiya Mai. Asahi Kazuma sighed, and when he turned around, a calm smile appeared on his face. "It's nothing. I saw you were running seriously, Amamiya-san, and I didn't want to disturb you." When Amamiya Mai walked over, her face was already slightly flushed from running fast, and she looked out of breath. Not to mention, she sounded unspeakable. "You don't look like you don't want to disturb me, but it's understandable. After all, I haven't come to the class very often and I'm not familiar with everyone." Amamiya Mai relaxed for a moment, smiled and said. Qian Yufengjian remained silent. Sure enough, his previous feeling was not an illusion. Amamiya Mai was really like a sharp saber. She was obviously chatting with him in a very calm tone, but she still exuded an indescribable edge. Asahi Kazuma smiled and said, "I can't help it. Amamiya-san's situation is quite special. To be honest, everyone doesn't know much about the family behind you. Plus these people." Asahi Kazuma pointed at the female bodyguard who was standing next to Amamiya Mai, looking at him with vigilant eyes and said, "It is always daunting." Amamiya Mai sighed softly and said helplessly, "There is nothing we can do about it. The situation in the group is getting more and more dangerous. We must always be on guard against some people overturning the table. Some people want to use the simplest method to win the victory. Fruit." Asahi Kazuma said he understood, but that didn't mean he would like it. Being stared at by a group of people all the time makes life feel boring. Therefore, adding a little bit of dark blue is the way to go. As long as his close combat ability is strong enough, he won't be restricted everywhere even in school. "So, what's going on, Amamiya-san?" Amamiya Mai shook her head and said with a smile, "It's nothing, I just heard that Asahi's grades improved very quickly, and she suddenly moved from the entrance class to the top of the grade, so I was a little curious." Kinya Kazuma said with a smile, "Maybe it's because after my health gets better, I can spend more time studying. Anyway, I want to congratulate you first. As soon as the results of the joint entrance examination of the 4 schools come out, I am afraid that Dongda University will also contact you to decide whether to decide your future major in advance. Then I'll lend you some good words," Qin Yufengjian said calmly. The two chatted a few more words, and Asahi Kazuma left the playground first. As he turned to leave, Asahi Kazuma frowned, with a slightly unhappy look on his face where Amamiya Mai couldn't see him. "Amamiya Mai? That's really interesting. Asahi Kazuma doesn't like this girl. It's not that Amamiya Mai is not good looking, or that her attitude when facing him is very rude. It's more because the two of them can't match the radio waves. With absolute pitch, Asaba Kazuma can be said to have the best judgment on other people's timbres. In this regard, even Shiina Yuin during this period could not compare to him. If he hadn't relied on this talent, how could he have fooled his parents and classmates about his relationship with Rina and Yuin so easily? However, precisely because of his talent, he easily discovered some emotions hidden in Amamiyamai's voice. There is appreciation and curiosity about him. There are admirations for his appearance. But I don't know why, but it's still full of unexplainable calculations and obscure dissatisfaction. Asahi Kazuma didn't understand what was going on. He had the impression that he had almost no contact with this woman, so why did he feel so emotional? If he didn't have absolute pitch, he wouldn't be able to feel this kind of emotional change, and he might just feel that the two of them couldn't match the radio waves. But with absolute pitch, he knew that his subconscious dissatisfaction was due to Amamiyamai's well-hidden dissatisfaction. He couldn't hear it, but he could vaguely feel it subconsciously. So many times people feel that they and someone are not on the right radio wave. Don't be too suspicious. It's just your brain warning you that something is wrong with this person. But now he can feel it more intuitively. Amamiyamai. It's best not to mess with me. Just learn to be a well-behaved tool like in the simulation, otherwise, it's a consortium, right? At worst, we can overturn the table together. The other side. Amamiyamai quietly looked at Asaba Kazuma, who was walking away. The seemingly gentle smile on her face slowly disappeared, and her face showed a thoughtful and indifferent expression. She turned to look at the female bodyguard standing beside her and said in a deep voice, "This Asahi Kazuma is very wary of us." The female bodyguard obviously had a different status from the other male bodyguards around her. She whispered, "Miss, do you suspect that he is also the owner of the Void Gene?" "Why couldn't it be?" A strange smile appeared on Amamiyamai's face. "Although the number of owners of the Void Gene that my family has studied over the years is rare, there are still a few. People like us, when it comes to our areas of expertise, can grow up much faster than ordinary people, let alone this great cartoonist. He has no professional learning experience, whether online or in real life." A beautiful and playful smile appeared on Amamiyamai's face. In this information age, many things will leave traces as soon as they are done. If you want to develop such a strong ability from scratch, it is not something you can do with ordinary methods. It can be explained by your talent. The female bodyguard was silent. She can understand the meaning of the object of her protection. Even a genius must stand on the shoulders of those who came before him. She went to investigate Asahi Kazuma's information. There were so many changes in this person during this period, and there was no trace of many changes at all. It's impossible to be reborn like in online novels, right? The only explanation is to have the Void Gene. As a confidant of Ms. Maya Amamiya, she also has a certain say in Genji. Naturally, she is well aware of the strength of the humans with Void Genes that Genji has come into contact with over the years. Even before the Void Gene has awakened, these gene owners are able to show geniuses far beyond ordinary people. And once you wake up, let's not talk about anything else, let's just talk about Ryo Kawanishi, the #1 Japanese tennis player who helped Japanese tennis win the Grand Slam. That guy is one of the partners of the Genji group, and even his annual physical examination is arranged by Genji. Japan's social media has almost blown Ryo Kawanishi to the sky. All the experiences of being a sports genius since childhood have been fabricated out of thin air and then placed on Ryo Sichuan. But the female bodyguard knew this was a complete joke. Before Kawanishi Ryo woke up from a high fever, he was a completely ordinary person. But since the Void Gene awakened, he showed his tennis talent far beyond ordinary people without any warning. Many media reported that Ryo Kawanishi has been honing his tennis skills in private for many years, but the truth is that it is rare for Japan's strongest tennis player to even touch the ball, even if he excludes playing matches for a month. When he's not partying everywhere, enjoying the hot eyes and even hotter body temperature of various female fans, he's just eating, drinking and having fun. But even so, Ryo Kawanishi still has a level of strength close to dominance in major world tennis opens, and there are very few people who can beat him. This ability has exceeded the understanding of the Genji group. Even among the Genji group employees who are specifically responsible for this part, some people call the owners of the Void Gene new humans. This means that these people are a special race of people who have completed evolution. If before the gene awakened, these people could still be regarded as geniuses in the field of human understanding, then after the awakening, these people are almost insurmountable in their respective fields. They are the modern Leonardo da Vinci, world record holders who can be surpassed for decades, monsters in the field of scientific research. Although the female bodyguard did not show any intention of identifying Isaba Kazuma as the owner of the Void Gene when talking to Amamiyamai, she actually knew in her heart that this person was probably the one. I just don't know what he is good at. They are all talents that are unparalleled among ordinary people, and even the talents that belong to the physical orientation may also have the possibility of physical strengthening, nerve reflex strengthening, muscle control, etc. in different directions. This person. It may not be that he is just talented in the field of comics, as he shows. As for why she was so sure, of course she found out that Isaba Kazuma had a serious illness earlier and took a few days off before going to class. For her, who is very familiar with the signs of Void Gene awakening, she is basically certain that this person should have completely awakened his own power after having a fever. "Miss, do you want to cooperate with this genius?" the female bodyguard asked in a deep voice. Amamiyamai shook her head and said, "Nothing, mainly because I came to see him. After all, this guy still caused me a little trouble." The female bodyguard whispered, "What about the joint entrance examination of the 4 schools?" Amamiyamai remained silent, and the female bodyguard understood the reason. After a long time, Amamiyamai said in a deep voice, "I was beaten by him in the joint entrance examination of the 4 schools. Someone in the family may have realized that my genetic talent is not the super learning ability that is said to the outside world. Trouble, those guys originally had strong objections, but now they may have another trump card revealed. This is really..." The female bodyguard didn't speak. There is a very obvious basis for judging the Void Gene awakeners within the Genji group, and that is their unreasonable dominance. If you don't have absolute dominance in the relevant fields, why are you called the awakened? Why are they called new humans? Amamiyamai is a real genius, at least in terms of learning, she is really good. But she knew that her talent did not come from the Void Gene, because her talent had always been obvious and there was no need to specifically test it. It is precisely because of this that she left herself a choice. She also has competitors within the Genji group. With the talent reserved, she can make her opponents unable to see her true identity, and she can use this to plan more things. As for how to deceive those people, it's very simple, just maintain the first place in the school since you entered school. Just like Shiina Yuan, another Void Gene owner who is 1 year ahead of her, as long as you always occupy the first place, no one knows what your true upper limit is. After all, some people get first place because they can only get first place. And some people get first place because the upper limit is first place. It's a pity that I can't deceive them now. Kinyu Kazuma, the illusion that I spent so much effort to maintain over the years has just been exposed by you. This is really... If she is the awakener of the so-called super learning power talent, then she should always be number 1. On the contrary, if she is not number 1, then in the eyes of those in the family, she cannot be an awakener in this area. Her undefeated golden body has been broken by Kinha Kazuma, but the old people in the family know the number of special talents she possesses. If it's not super learning ability, then there must be some talent that they don't know yet. I'm afraid someone will come to question her soon. Trouble. Thinking of this, she showed an unhappy expression on her face. I really want to find a chance to beat him. The female bodyguard whispered, do you need me to find someone for help? I won't let him know. Amamayamai shook her head, forget it, I keep my trump card until necessary, but it just happened to be exposed this time, and he has a good relationship with Shiana Kane. Thanks to her sideways verification of my talent over the years, I have lived peacefully for several years. Accepting this love, I have to think of the good of others. Although she doesn't know my situation at all, I have to admit it myself. She and Asaba Kazuma are in love, so don't disturb their lives. The female bodyguard sighed softly. The situation of the young lady in the family has been very bad these years. Inheriting the family's blessings, but not being willing to inherit the UN family's surname, this behavior is undoubtedly deviant and even shameless in the eyes of the elders. After all, in the eyes of those people, you don't even have the surname UN, so what qualifications do you have to inherit the family industry? Even after Miss Mai took charge of the branch and brought it to a new level time and time again, those people would still have strong doubts in their hearts. Sometimes she actually wants to persuade the young lady that there is no need to continue to be stubborn with the head of the family because of what happened back then. If she continues to persist, her little hope of controlling the group will become even slimmer. Do you think I am ungrateful and want to control the entire Genji family without inheriting the Minamoto family name? Amamayamai said with a smile. The female bodyguard didn't speak. She didn't dare to answer the question. Amamayamai did not embarrass her, but said quietly, I don't know that I am asking for trouble, but I can't swallow this breath. When my mother died of illness in bed, she still told me not to blame the old guy. Oh, she was thinking about that man, but at the end of her life, he was still working in the company because of the name of the UN family. The more he values Genji's brand, the more I will take over the group in Amamaya's name. No reason, just to take a breath. Her voice became quieter and quieter until finally only she could hear it clearly. The female bodyguard knew that the young lady did not say this to her, but to herself. It is such a difficult operation to take charge of the Genji family under another family's surname. Some financial groups and famous families in Japan will choose a son-in-law to take over the family business if they only have an only daughter. However, other sons-in-law also bear their own surnames. It's rare for a woman to be in charge of a consortium. She doesn't even want her surname and wants to compete for that position. If it weren't for Amamayamai's great achievements over the years, she would have been in trouble long ago. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. We've traveled through Tokyo, who still wants to simulate love? Author, Fei Se Hui-Xiang. Chapter 148. Asaba Kazuma did not know the conversation between Amamayamai and the female bodyguard. Even if he knew, he didn't really care. Nature has already sent a message, and now the old professor from the University of Tokyo is sending him messages to say congratulations. According to him, he has already applied for admission without examination with the leaders of Tokyo University in advance. As long as he is willing, the admission notice for the medical major will be sent to him in advance. Asaba Kazuma is already thinking about whether to enter Tokyo University a year early like in the love simulation. Wait a minute, as expected, let's just leave them alone for a year. After much thought, he finally chose not to enter Tokyo University at the same time as Shiana Yuan. After all, the price/performance ratio is really too low. Why did you join the University of Tokyo so early? The first is to use the resources of the University of Tokyo as soon as possible to accelerate the progress of a series of research on gene stabilization reagents. The second is to use the platform of the university to quickly absorb knowledge and cultivate experience, paving the way for in-depth research later. The third is to be able to spend more time with Shianakian, live with her, and live an enviable life as a couple of gods and gods. However, the premise of all this is that it is in a love simulation. There is a big difference between love simulation and reality, that is, he does not need to consider variables. For example, when playing a love simulation with UMI, there is no need to consider Rina, who actually exists in the background of the love simulation. This is tantamount to completely abandoning Rina's route and investing all his energy on Hyun's side. It doesn't matter if you do this in a love simulation, but in reality, wouldn't that cost him his life? So Asahikazuma chose to refuse. If he and Kian really enter the University of Tokyo directly, and Kian proposes to find a house to live near Tokyo University together, can he refuse? You can only choose to agree. The result is that he will spend most of his daily time with Hyun, and the time he originally spent with Rina will be gone. This was something he wouldn't allow to happen. Sure enough, it's better to postpone the relationship with Hyun for a year before deepening the relationship with Hyun. By then, Rina is at the company and Hyun is at the university. I can spend time with Rina from 1 to 35 and Hyun from 2 to 46. I can have some fun for myself on Sunday. Fake, when the two of you are getting along well, then we'll sleep together 7 days a week. There was a trace of ambition in Kinyakazuma's eyes. Career and love, he wants them all. After he left the playground, he sent a new message to Shianauman, telling him about his new location. Soon the two met smoothly. Seeing Shianauman again, her temples were slightly moist, and she said helplessly, "I was called by Mr. Hayakawa to help." "Really, I have never seen them call me so frequently before." "I finally came out to play with you, sir." It was interrupted. Asahikazuma smiled and said, "The story between us may not spread, but it is unlikely that the teacher will know about it." Shianakane thought for a moment, sighed and said, "That's true, the teachers are very well informed. There are always students who feel that they can hide many things from their teachers, but in fact, students who have had more contact with teachers all know that it can happen when you are distracted in class, when you are making friends with a classmate of the opposite sex, or when you are taking an exam. Even if you cheat quietly, it is difficult to hide it from the teacher's eyes. It has not been exposed. Firstly, the teacher does not care. Secondly, the teacher does not want to take care of it and selectively ignores it. With Hayakawa Harina's character, I am afraid that she has already discovered the estrangement between the two. This is a hint that we shouldn't go too far." Asabakazuma smiled and said, "But according to my understanding of Mr. Hayakawa, what she thinks about not going too far is actually quite high." Shianauman was a little confused for a moment and didn't understand what Asabakazuma meant. This innocent look amused Asahikazuma. He sneaked close to her ear and explained. "The upper limit is not to let girls sit in confinement." As soon as he finished speaking, Shianakian hit him and his face turned rosy, dirty. Qian Yufengjian spread his hands and said, "That's not what I said." Shianakane muttered softly, "Why do I feel like these adults are full of pornographic waste in their minds all day long?" Asabakazuma said, "It's not that people think of pornographic waste. After all, Shiana Senpai is really a beautiful girl that is hard to resist. Teacher Hayakawa is worried that I will not be able to control myself. This is natural. This is I am sure of your charm." These words made Shianakian's face turn red, but she felt a lot of secret joy in her heart. In the end, she could only cover her face with her hands and dared not speak. But the curious little eyes that quietly emerged from the gaps between her fingers made her even more playful. Asahikazuma couldn't help but smile, and whispered, "Let's go, today is the last day of the cultural festival." Shianakian's heart trembled slightly. Is it finally this time? Shianakian looked a little dazed for a moment. Cultural festival, apple candy, bonfire party, dance under the moon. At this moment, the dream seemed to shine into reality, and everything seemed to change from illusion to reality. She raised her head, looked at Kinyo Kazuma, and spoke in a very rare initiative. "Phasma, dance with me at the bonfire night." Chienyu Kazuma was stunned for a moment. I didn't expect that she would take the initiative to dance, which was a bit different from the love simulation. In other words, is this the connection between the two people? They all think of each other at this moment. He lowered his head, gently touched the corner of her lips, smiled and said, "Okay, let's dance together." He paused for a moment, and then continued to emphasize, "A dance that only belongs to the two of us." That afternoon, the two of them had a quick lunch. Kinyo Kazuma quietly prepared an apple candy for her. Although the progress was different from that in the dating simulation, Asaba Kazuma still hoped to continue to feel the aroma of pressed apple candy spreading on the corners of her lips. After all, it could taste sweeter. The cultural festival gradually came to an end. The person in charge of the cultural festival activities from all parties has been called to the playground, waiting for the school to make the final statistics, and then start to clean up the final materials. As Asaba Kazuma expected, the theme cafe, the main project of Asaba Kazuma's second-year special admission Class 1, became the most popular project at the cultural festival. Further down, the second most popular project is the performance project of the vocal club jointly run by Shiina Uman and Asaba Kazuma. It can only be said that the leadership of these two people directly made the relatively mediocre performance no longer so mediocre. It is not so much a victory for the vocal club, but a victory for Asaba Kazuma and Shiina Uman. As for third place, still closely related to Asaba Kazuma, it was also the food stall made by their class. Because Asaba Kazuma teamed up with partners, they only made snack packaging that matched the theme. The quantity was small, but it was quite popular with some die-hard fans. In other words, whether it's comics, novels, or Kunula games, die-hard fans have basically no resistance to words like limited. The food stalls made by Asaba Kazuma's class are actually just mediocre. They are definitely not bad, but you have to say how good they are. That's really it. But even so, Tokyo fans of these related IPs still followed closely after hearing the news, and they had a subtle sense of déjà vu like they encounter in another world recorded in K. Thanks to the die-hard fans' enthusiastic pursuit of limited editions, the food stall event, which has always been difficult to rank high, actually climbed into the top 3. If you really want to count it out, these 3 activities are all related to Asaba Kazuma. They are truly the Asaba Kazuma Cultural Festival. Even when the materials were being packed at the end, whether it was at the themed cafe or the food stall, fans were eyeing the themed items used for decoration and directly helped Asaba Kazuma and the others sort out the materials. Then I happily returned home with these Hakuin High School Cultural Festival limited costumes. It really made everyone dumbfounded. Asaba Kazuma was even thinking that the decorations at the food stalls were filled with the smell of fireworks of life. Wouldn't it be a little uncomfortable for these fans to just take the things back and put them in the room? But since they really wanted it, Asaba Kazuma had no reason to stop them. The feedback from all parties involved in this event was relatively good, and even the editor-in-chief of Shonen Jump even made a special call to contact Asaba Kazuma to inquire about the relevant operating procedures. From the looks of it, the plan is to put the promotion of some popular IPs directly into the sinking market of student groups to see if we can further increase the popularity of the works through some evil ways and then drive sales. However, Asaba Kazuma is not optimistic about their operation. He was able to make this event so successful because the person involved in the design was Asaba Kazuma. It is precisely because of the particularity of his own works that this cultural festival event has been dubbed limited in the minds of some fans. But whether it is Weekly Shonen Jump or Shueisha behind it, they exist more as a platform and are basically not involved in the production of cultural products. It is not an easy task to find qualified designers who are willing to take the initiative to help with design. If the same template is used and popularized at major cultural festivals, the uniqueness will be lost. Without the appeal of limited edition, wouldn't the cost of publicity go up? At the end of the day, I'm afraid it won't be another piece of cake. But this has nothing to do with him. The cultural festival ended peacefully, and he could finally take a break. He finished the fried rice in a few strokes and looked at Shianakane, who was licking the apple candy with his tongue, a soft smile on his face. Seemingly noticing Asaba Kazuma's gaze, Shianakane smiled so hard that she showed her little fangs. There weren't many students nearby, and she hoped he can be happier. So she took the initiative and stretched out the candy apple, and said with a smile, "Want to eat?" Asahi Kazuma clearly knew what the girl was thinking, but when he saw her provocative look, he still pretended to be dissatisfied and said, "Who wants to eat your saliva, senior?" Then before Shianakane had time to feel embarrassed, he leaned forward. Chirp. He gently ate the candy piece on the corner of Shianakane's lips and smiled extremely proudly. Over there in Daxia, there are red sleeves that add fragrance to the night reading, and now Bai Yin also has the fragrance to taste the sugar coating on the corner of his lips. Shianakane blushed and muttered, "You're always teasing me." "But it's really delicious." Asaba Kazuma smiled brightly, "I not only want to eat it this time, but I also want to continue eating it in the future. I am a very greedy person." Asaba Kazuma said seriously. "As for what he is greedy for, I am afraid only he himself knows." But at least in Shianaka's ears, he could only decipher part of the meaning. He wants to greedily occupy all of her. Under such circumstances, each class of the cultural festival had basically completed the follow-up finishing work, and came to the playground one after another. Even the third-year students who were preparing for the exam deliberately stayed to participate in the bonfire party. After all, their time on campus is running out. There are always those people who hug the entire class just to hug that person. Even if they are preparing for the exam and don't have time to participate in the cultural festival, at least there is a chance to invite girls who want to dance with them at the bonfire party or something like that. Of course, this kind of thing would be somewhat embarrassing for Asaba Kazuma in his previous high school life. In his mother's previous life, many college students could dance ballroom dancing, and it was even a part of many college lives at that time. On the contrary, by the time Asaba Kazuma was in college, he had rarely heard of large-scale ballroom dancing exercises organized by the school. "Let's go, Heian, let's go to the rooftop." It was almost time for the bonfire dance music, but neither of them had any thoughts of dancing down there. The growing love is like a spark that spreads quietly, and like a little thief who steals your heart, always wanting to carefully hide it in your own time without being seen by anyone. What Jianyu Kazuma didn't notice was that at the gate of the campus, a girl quietly poked her head out, curiously looking at the bonfire that was just starting to light. The burning bonfire was reflected in the girl's eyes, with an envious look on her face. Since she dropped out of school, these trivial matters related to youth have no connection with her. The visitor is none other than Rina Ishihara. According to normal circumstances, Ishihara Rina should not have come at this time. But now Ishihara Rina is a little worried. Because Rina Ishihara, who had obtained the memory of the dream, discovered that the relevant developments in reality were increasingly different from those in the dream. In the dream memories she had, there was no such thing as meeting Asaba Kazuma's parents, nor did she go to the cultural festival of Hakuin High School. As the event came to an end today, she was chatting with Lily on the phone. Lily mentioned that there will be a dance after the bonfire party today, and many girls will express their love to the boys they like at this time. When Rina heard this, the first thing she thought of was Asaba Kazuma. If it were him, many people would definitely come looking for him. Somehow, she wanted to come over and have a look. We've traveled through Tokyo, who still wants to simulate love? Author, Fei Se Hui Xiang. Chapter 149. Rina, who was looking around, didn't attract anyone's attention. The ardent expectations in her heart brought this girl who did not dare to leave home easily to the bonfire party. Or maybe she was feeling uneasy inside. The discrepancy between dream memories and reality was getting bigger and bigger. If the love hadn't continued, she felt like she wouldn't be able to have a normal state of mind. Even so, she was still afraid of losing. It was precisely because of her close contact with Asaba Kazuma that she became more aware of how terrible a poison her sweetheart was to girls. The poison exuded a sweet aroma, inducing everyone to take it quietly and then sink like this. If this bottle of poison hadn't known how to put a stopper on the mouth of the bottle, I'm afraid how many girls would have suffered. It was precisely because she understood his charm that she thought of coming to school to take a look. If possible, it would be better to dispel other people's pursuit of Asaba Kazuma and dance with him at the bonfire party. Unfortunately, Rina Ishihara, who had always timidly embraced her little possessions, finally developed a fruit called possessiveness under the careful cultivation of Asaba Kazuma. But Rina Ishihara is obviously going to be disappointed. Asaba Kazuma had already quietly gone to the rooftop with Shiina Kane, so no matter how much Ishihara Rina looked around, she couldn't see him at the scene. Naturally, Rina Ishihara did not feel disappointed. The fact that he was not at the bonfire party meant that he would not be harassed by girls. Although it was a pity that he could not dance with him, there was no need to worry about sneaky cats approaching. Ishihara Rina, who figured this out, was ready to leave. As she walked out of the school gate, she almost bumped into a burly woman at the corner. "Don't lower your head when walking, raise your head to look at the road." The woman looked warily at Rina Ishihara, who suddenly bumped into her from around the corner. "Ah, hug, sorry, I was just thinking about something and didn't pay attention." Rina Ishihara subconsciously took a step back. This sister's pectoralis major is too exaggerated. This is no joke. Her body looks bullier than many men who have been working out all year round. The female bodyguard looked up and down Ishihara Rina. After confirming that the girl was harmless, she breathed a sigh of relief and her expression softened a lot. After all, Ishihara Rina's posture that looks like she could easily be rubbed makes her less likely to have any desire to attack. "Okay, Ling, she doesn't mean any harm." A soft voice sounded. Rina Ishihara looked subconsciously in the direction of the sound. What a beautiful person. Rina Ishihara looked at Mai Amamiya, who had long shawl hair, sharp eyes, and a heroic appearance, with a little curiosity in her little eyes. Amamiya Mai didn't react at first. She was originally going to take a bus back to the company, but it was purely a coincidence that she went back to school today, because the people inside Genji asked her to go back to school to see how this year's cultural festival was going. As we all know, if you want to hold a cultural festival, you need to spend money. Bein High School is a famous school, but even if it is a famous school, the source of funding is not the tuition fees of the students, but the support of Japan's education fund, and the support of the capital, which occupies a larger share. The school has achieved excellent results in the college entrance examination over the years. Excellent results have attracted more excellent students. Excellent students create a relatively better learning atmosphere, thus attracting children of famous families, consortiums, or branch personnel to enter the school, and bringing huge financial support, and huge financial support can retain better teachers, which ultimately brings students' performance to a higher level. This is a relatively complete closed loop. But the management is not a fool, and will not give support to a school like Bein High School without any bottom line, and then do no supervision. A considerable part of the funds for activities such as cultural festivals come from the support of employers, and among the Hakuin High School Board of Directors, the one with the largest funds and the strongest power happens to be the Genji Group, to which Amamiya Mai belongs. Amamiya Mai returned to school this time just to see if the money spent on the cultural festival was basically spent on what it should be used for. If she was just doing a very small cultural festival, but revealed accounting statements that were obviously unrealistic, she would need to exercise the authority of the council on behalf of Genji. Fortunately, Bai Yin had always followed the rules in high school and did not waste her too much time. After checking the spying report, she walked around the site a few times and found no major problems. She didn't plan to stay for any bonfire party and planned to go back to the company directly. But just as he was about to go and get in the car, he bumped into a girl who had her head lowered and was a little reckless. Although Amamiya Mai has a fierce style, she has no interest in bullying a student for this kind of thing. She prefers to wield a knife against the stronger one. But she didn't notice it at first. When Ishihara raised her head, she was still surprised. What a beautiful girl! Amamiya Mai boasted that her appearance was a weapon that could be used rationally. Even if she looked around the world, it would be difficult to find one. However, she never expected that just in Hakuin High School, she would meet two people with looks comparable to hers. Girl. She took a second look and realized something was wrong. Is that a tourist who came to attend Hakuin High School? Rina Ishihara hesitated and said, I just came here to find someone. Amamiya Mai nodded and said, I just said that you should not be a student of our school. Ishihara tilted her head, as if she didn't understand what Amamiya Mai meant. Amamiya Mai had a good impression of this girl she had only met once. She had always been thoughtful, but that didn't mean that a thoughtful person would like someone who was equally smart and capable. On the contrary, if she doesn't have any interests to face such a person, she will feel very tired. Just taking care of a small part of the property that Genji handed over to her was already a lot of energy. Dealing with a fox like Asaba Kazuma was far less easy for her than dealing with this girl. Therefore, she didn't mind saying more about such a naive person. My memory is pretty good. I can remember almost all the students in the school after scanning the personnel and related information. The students of Bian High School in the past 3 years, there is no such thing as you. Ah, you are so amazing, Rina Ishihara said sincerely. Being able to write down student information at a glance is something Ishihara cannot do. Her compliment is quite sincere. On the contrary, Amamiya Mai felt a little embarrassed. If it was someone who looked too mediocre, she might not be able to determine it yet. But with the look of this girl, she would definitely be able to remember the information after reading it. Without him, being good-looking is so willful. Who are you looking for? The bonfire party is about to end tonight. If you can't find her now, you won't be able to find her when the bonfire party ends. If it's something more important, I suggest you call her directly. Make a phone call. After this idea flashed through Ishihara's mind, she quickly gave up the idea. She didn't like to cause trouble for Kazuma. This time I came here with the idea of just in case I can dance. After all, Lily also said that many people were just ordinary classmates before the bonfire party, but the atmosphere at the bonfire party was so intense that if you were not careful, there could be more than 10 or 20 couples after the party. She also wanted to do more things with Kazuma that couples should do. Forget it, I'm ready to go back. Rina Ishihara said timidly. Seeing this, Amamiya sighed softly. She had such a timid period before, but later she figured out that timidity would not allow her to get what she wanted, so now her painting style is completely different from when she was a child. Seeing this girl's appearance now, for a moment I seemed to see myself in the past. Some people always reflect their own past when they look at other people. Amamiya happens to be that. While feeling a little sad, her attitude towards Ishihara was a bit more kind, and she said slightly teasingly, "Why don't you tell me who you want to find? Maybe I saw him when I first came out." Ishihara's eyes lit up, and she glanced warily at this beautiful person. She exudes an aura that a girl of her age shouldn't have. It was difficult for Rina Ishihara to explain what it felt like, but she could feel that this girl really wanted to help her. She is just timid, and sometimes she is a little slow to react when encountering Asahi Kazuma, but she is not stupid, and she does not think that such a person will really have anything to do with Asahi Kazuma. After thinking for a moment, she finally wanted to see Asahi Kazuma, and she said with some embarrassment, I originally wanted to come to Kinha Kazuma. No, I don't know if you have seen him." Amamiyamai narrowed her eyes. She is not an ignorant little girl. Although Rina Ishihara didn't say anything, she could already figure out the relationship between this girl and Asahi Kazuma just from the look on her face. She laughed softly and said, "Chien Kazuma, my classmate, I did see him when I came out just now, but I don't know where he went. I can give you a tip." Ah, Ishihara Rina was a little confused and didn't understand what Amamiyamai wanted to express. Amamiyamai pointed to a tall obelisk building in the center of Hakuin High School and said, "The school's bell tower is not closed yet. This is the tallest building in our school. It happens to be in the middle of the school. You can take the elevator there first. Go to the top floor, and then take the stairs to the top. You can see most of the entire school grounds, and you might have a chance to see the person you are looking for." Ishihara Rina thought for a while and felt that she had more time now anyway, so she nodded with a gentle and bright smile on her face. Thank you, thank you." She hurriedly searched for any thank you gifts, but in the end she only found a few candies. She put the candy in Amamiyamai's palm with some embarrassment. "Also, please don't dislike it." Amamiyamai's eyes moved slightly, and she smiled from the bottom of her heart. "Then I will accept it without mercy." "Yeah, I'm leaving." Ishihara Rina turned around and ran towards the clock tower pointed by Amamiyamai. Halfway through, he turned around and waved happily in the direction of Amamiyamai. Amamiyamai shook her hand in response. It wasn't until Ishihara Rina entered the bell tower that the smile on her face gradually disappeared. "Miss, the car has arrived," the female bodyguard whispered. Amamiyamai said and got into the car. Sitting in the car, she slowly lowered the window, looked in the direction of the bell tower, pushed away the wrapper of one of the candies in her palm, and threw it into her mouth. Perhaps because it still carries some of the girl's body temperature, the toffee is a bit soft, and the sweetness continues to spread. Maya Amamiya, who was sitting in the back seat, savored it for a long time, and the vehicle had already driven a short distance. Amamiyamai suddenly whispered, "Ling, do you think men like to play with the feelings of ignorant girls so much?" The female bodyguard named Ling did not speak. She knew that Amamiyamai was thinking of her father and some things from the past. Amamiyamai sighed and said, "I originally said that if I had the chance, I would help a bunch of Shianakane and her boyfriend, but now it seems that she is trusting someone else." The scenery beside the car window fell backwards quickly, and Amamiyamai showed a sarcastic smile on her face and whispered, "Perhaps it would be better if his true identity was exposed as soon as possible, but I don't know what kind of expression that idiot will show later." Boom! With the sound of fireworks exploding in the sky, it got a little brighter. At this time, on the rooftop of the Bian High School teaching building, Asahi Kazuma looked at the exploding fireworks, turned to look at Shianakane and said, "Hien, why don't you cover your eyes first? I'll give you a little surprise." Shianayuin paused for a moment, and couldn't help but think of the silver eye patch he put on himself in the dream simulation. She blushed slightly, but nodded in agreement. Chien Kazuma took out the silver rose hollow eye mask and handed it to her. She took it obediently and put it on. At this moment, the world was dark, and one could only vaguely hear the sounds of students laughing in the distance. It was at this time that a burst of melodious music sounded. That was the violin she was most familiar with. Asahi Kazuma used his palace-level violin playing skills wantonly, and sent his blessing to her on the rooftop, on the last day of the cultural festival. This piece of music has been heard by Shianakane. In the dream memory, this was the gift he gave her. The score is called Night of Confession, which expresses his confession to her. She could no longer suppress her thoughts, so she took off her blindfold and threw herself into his arms. Asaba Kazuma, do you want a girlfriend or not? Asahi Kazuma didn't say anything, just made a gesture to invite dancing, and winked slyly. Ma'am, it's dancing time. Shianakian smiled sweetly, the dance music on her mobile phone sounded, and on the rooftop, the two began the dance that spanned virtuality and reality. And at this time, in the bell tower not far away, Ishihara looked at the two figures quietly, feeling a little at a loss for a moment. We've traveled through Tokyo, who still wants to simulate love? Author, Fei Se Hui-Xiang. Chapter 150. It wasn't until the two people on the rooftop finished dancing that Asaba Kazuma smiled and said, "Did you have fun today?" Shianakian whispered, "Happy. Let's dance together again, this time next year." Good. Today, she felt as if she was much more candid than before. When they were about to arrive downstairs, they met Hayakawa Haruna. The head teacher of the special class was standing quietly in the corridor, with the light of his mobile phone on, and he didn't know what he was looking at. It was getting late, and the teaching building was dark. The two of them saw her at a glance. She seemed to hear the footsteps of the two of them, turned her head to look at the two of them, and waved her hand as a greeting. Shianakane smiled shyly. Although she knew that there were some things that could not be hidden from the teachers at school, she was still embarrassed to say that she was directly discovered by Haruna Hayakawa, the teacher who had taught her before. "Go home early, it's getting late," Hayakawa Haruna said calmly. The two nodded, and just as they were about to say goodbye, Hayakawa Haruna said one more thing, "Kazuma, if you have nothing to do later, please stay for a while and I will tell you something." Asaba Kazuma paused for a moment. He originally wanted to refuse directly, but the cultural festival came to a successful conclusion, and he no longer had too many worries. An Xian sent Haiyin to their doorstep, and during this period the young couple cultivated their relationship. In this situation, the relationship between the two people, which quickly heated up, could naturally break through to the next stage. The next thing to consider is how to balance the relationship between Rina and Yuan. That's what he originally thought. However, Shianakane pushed him on the back, "Don't worry, there are still some students down there who have not dispersed. We will all take the bus back together. You don't have to worry too much about my safety." Qian Yufengjian was helpless. Shianauman was obviously asking him to stay and deal with Haruna Hayakawa, so there was no need to worry too much about her safety. However, the security in the area where Bian High School itself is located is good, and there are indeed many students down there who have not dispersed. It is unlikely that it is unsafe or something. But sister, this has nothing to do with safety. Atmosphere. What an atmosphere. Kinya Kazuma didn't say anything more and stayed with a look of helplessness. Shiana Yuan had achieved her ultimate goal today, and her steps were much brisker when she went downstairs. Hayakawa Haruna didn't say much, just lit a lady's cigarette, and waited until no more noise was heard in the teaching building, then she said helplessly, "You look quite happy." Asaba Kazuma said with a smile, "Of course I'm happy. It's not like Mr. Hayakawa. He is obviously very good looking, but he has never had a boyfriend. He is too lonely." Hayakawa Haruna raised her eyebrows, "You are pointing out that I was born single. Just say it, right?" "Yes, so what? Fortunately, you are good looking, so I don't have to worry about whether you can get married in the future. Should I still be happy?" Hayakawa Haruna is somewhat helpless towards her student. Asaba Kazuma is different from other students. Other students, even those who tend to be gangsters, are always filled with awe deep in their hearts when facing teachers. This feeling is like a younger brother meeting an older sister. It's not that the elder sister can really control the younger brother. It's purely a kind of species suppression. If the elder sister is made anxious, even if Bang Bang punches you twice, you don't dare to fight back. I can only stand upright and take the beating. The same goes for teachers. Bein High School is a prestigious school after all, and the students who can enter this school, no matter how bad they are, will not be the same as those pure gangsters. At least in the years that Haruna Hayakawa taught, she had never encountered a student like Asaba Kazuma. At first, she didn't notice any problems with him. She just felt that this child was more relaxed than other students. It wasn't until later that she understood what this strange feeling was about. It should be said that no matter how good the other students are with her, they still use her as their teacher. But Asahi Kazuma regarded her more as a friend. This subtle gap can only be felt more clearly in private. This is why she is standing here now. She sighed and said, "The girl Lily brought here yesterday, if I remember correctly, her name is Ishihara Rina, right? What is your relationship with her?" Kinya Kazuma hesitated for a moment and did not say anything immediately. It seems that Mr. Hayakawa saw Lily when she was walking around the school with Rina yesterday. Well, I am afraid that Hayakawa Haruna also saw him when he was taking Rina Ishihara around. There are some things that are easy to fool a high school student with clear and stupid eyes, but if you want to fool an adult, the difficulty has to be much higher. Obviously, Hayakawa Haruna relied on her own judgment to directly find the truth. So he fell silent. However, silence is useless. Seeing his appearance, Hayakawa Haruna knew that things were almost as she guessed. Not taking a stand is an attitude in itself. This is similar to the fact that at the United Nations, a certain 5-member Black Rabbit abstained from voting, which means acquiescence or even support. If you really want to object, you should directly use your veto power. Therefore, if it is not the case, he should also. You're already a scumbag before you go to college, but I can't control you. Hayakawa Haruna smiled and said, "But I still want to remind you that that girl came to school to find you this evening." Kinya Fengjian's breathing was stagnant, and her heart was broken. It's rare for Hayakawa Haruna to see Asaba Kazuma's perverted look. "Why do you know you are nervous now?" Qianyu Fengjian didn't speak, and the expression on his face changed uncertainly. Hayakawa Haruna, on the other hand, looked like she was watching the fun. Her long legs in high heels were tapping on the floor, and the lady's cigarette between her fingers was burning slowly. "When did she come here?" Kinya Kazuma said with a somewhat hoarse voice. "She must have been here for a while. She seemed to have met Amamiyamai when she was at the school gate. She pointed directly in the direction of the bell tower and asked the girl to go up and look for you. I happened to see you when I was passing by." Hayakawa Haruna rolled her eyes and said, "Be mentally prepared. If you are in two different boats, it will be a matter of time before you overturn. You don't really think you can hide it until the end, do you?" Asayu Kazuma's breathing began to quicken. What's even more terrible is that Hayakawa Haruna also added, "Let me remind you, that girl knows about you and Shiina Kane, which means Lily also knows about it. It won't be long before Hien will also know about this." She wanted to complain a few more words, but Asahi Kazuma had already ran downstairs. She shook her head and said, "If I had known this, why did I do it in the first place?" On the other side, Asaba Kazuma took a taxi and rushed towards Ishihara Rina's house. Along the way, he kept sending messages to Ishihara Rina using Line, but all the messages seemed to be lost in the ocean, with no reply. His expression was a little restless, and he felt suddenly very uncomfortable. In fact, he has been ignoring his scumbag behavior intentionally or unintentionally. Sometimes he would also think, would it be better if he could restrain his desires at the beginning and just treat the love simulation as a pure game? If he hadn't had a game mentality towards the dating simulation at the beginning, and didn't pay so much attention to it, and ignored the impact of the unfolding memory scenes on him, he might not have become what he hated most before. In this way, could he naturally restrain his emotions and let them go? However, none of this matters anymore. Things have already happened, and we can only choose to face them. He admitted that he was a person who didn't have that much of a moral obsession. After he understood what he wanted to have it all. But now that the incident happened, when he was sitting in the car, what echoed in his mind was the image of Ishihara Rina timidly hugging her legs and crying. Asahi Kazuma actually knows that her ability to resist risks is basically zero. The risk here refers not only to crises in life, but more to her inner endurance. Her life is already hard enough. After encountering her experience, a girl with low self-esteem will only seal her heart tightly and use the most helpless way to block the storm from the outside world. However, one day, a scoundrel who knew the future came to him and quietly opened a crack in the dusty door. So she thought he was her world, quietly opened the door, and rushed towards him. Then it was flooded by heavy rain in an instant. But Asahi Kazuma really can't let go. Because she had already run into the heavy rain. If he chose to let go, she would have nothing but the rain. How could he give it up? Standing in front of Ishihara Na's house, he suddenly had the idea of not daring to knock on the door. Unfortunately, even when he first met Rina Ishihara, he would not have such nervous and complicated emotions. But he knocked on the door anyway. There is no light in the dim room. Ishihara Rina was lying on the bed in the room, covered with a quilt, quietly flipping through her phone, looking at the chat history between him and her, reading over and over again from the earliest messages to the recent ones. Suddenly big tears flowed down. Her emotional stupidity is like a house with closed doors and windows. Although she heard the footsteps of love walking back and forth in front of the house, at a certain moment she naively thought that those were not footsteps passing by, but it is the steps towards oneself. So when the doorbell rang, she chose to open the door and embrace him with the most passionate gesture she could. Perhaps this was the happiest moment in her life. Then she woke up. Until today. In her daze she heard the doorbell ringing. She subconsciously got up from the bed, without even having time to put on her shoes, and hurried downstairs to the door. Every time she knew he was coming suddenly, she would always go downstairs in a hurry, for fear that he would get impatient and leave. But now, standing at the door, she didn't dare to open the door at all. The darkness that surged in for a moment seemed to submerge her whole body, as if she was back on the road with heavy rain. She could do nothing to stop her and could only watch as everything she cherished was taken away. Bang all over. The happiness of a family of 3 was shattered to pieces. Her body was in a trance, and she didn't dare to open the door for a while. Now he is leaving her too. If she opened the door, would he say goodbye to her and leave like this? The doorbell. Still echoing in annoyance. Asahi Kazuma pressed the doorbell again and again. If Ishihara Rina didn't open the door, he would keep pressing it. 1 minute. 10 minutes. 20 minutes. Half an hour. The door finally opened slowly. Behind the door, Ishihara Rina's eyes were as red as a bunny, and she looked out the door with some fear. Then a pair of hands stopped on the door and pulled it open with great force. There has never been a moment when Asahi Kazuma would be so grateful to the love simulator for adding strength to his body. When he needed to open the door the most, Rina Ishihara opened the door irresistibly. "Why did you come here today?" Kinya Kazuma said in a hoarse voice, "Is it possible that I can leave my sister alone at home? Does he know I'm looking for him?" Rina Ishihara was panicked for a moment. She held in her breath and did not cry. She just said in a low voice, "That girl is very beautiful. I have seen her before. There is no need to cut off contact with her because of someone like me." Qian Yufengma was furious. "I came to my sister's side not because I felt sorry for you. If I were like this, you wouldn't be able to stand here peacefully now, my belly would have been enlarged by me." If in the love simulation, his feelings for Ishihara Rina were more distressed at the beginning, then later on, he could say loudly, "Only loving you is never a lie." If he really had no idea at all, and the progress between him and Hien was so slow in the beginning. It wasn't because he had feelings that he seemed more restrained when he first started to treat Hien. This is the emotion shown during the love simulation. You know, at that time, he was simply treating the progress of the love simulation as if he were playing a game. Not to mention that now in reality, the closer they are to each other, the more attracted they become. If we say, he is the first love of Rina Ishihara and Kai-ide Shiina. So for Asaba Kazuma, isn't this the first time he and the two have started falling in love? That's why he felt so heartbroken when he saw Rina so sad. He reached out and grabbed her wrist. Go upstairs. Rina stood at the door without moving. Sister, you don't listen to me now, do you? Asaba Kazuma knew that if he hesitated now, something would really happen, so he decisively reached out and hugged Rina directly. He hooked his toes toward the door, and the door closed, and he directly carried Rina Ishihara upstairs in a princess-like hug that she couldn't resist. Ishihara Rina struggled for a while, but still couldn't resist him and was carried to the bedroom. Why do you still come here? Ishihara Rina finally couldn't help it, and her voice was filled with tears. You can just ignore me and let me hide here alone, and I won't come out to hinder your business. As long as you have time, think of me, come here, just stay with me. She buried her head in Kinya Kazuma's arms. Don't leave me. I'm not in a good condition these days. I have tendinitis and I'm very tired from typing. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. We've traveled through Tokyo. Who still wants to simulate love? Author, Fei Se Hui-Xiang. Chapter 151. Aren't you already accompanied by someone today? Ishihara Rina said softly. She looked very fragile today, curled up in Qian Yufengjian's arms, like a wounded little animal. Sister, do you believe me? Ishihara Rina raised her head and looked at him. She originally wanted to believe it, but today at the clock tower, watching him and other girls dancing under the moon, she could feel the happiness even though they were far apart, which made her very happy. Defeat. Or let her say she doesn't believe him, but she is really reluctant. They are all her knights, the groom of her dreams. So she finally nodded. Rina Ishihara said in a tone that even she herself didn't understand. I trust you. Asahi Kazuma heard Ishihara Rina say this, and suddenly felt relieved. Rina Ishihara is still willing to communicate, which is a good thing. If Ishihara Rina completely refuses to communicate with him, let alone trust him, then things will be in trouble. Sister, do you believe in fate? Qian Yufengjian said softly. Rina Ishihara hesitated for a moment and finally nodded. This surprised Asaba Kazuma. In today's society and the background of atheism, ordinary people are not interested in so-called topics such as fate and fate. But I didn't expect Rina Ishihara to accept the existence of fate as a matter of course. Kinya Kazuma hesitated for a while, but finally revealed the secret he had hidden in his heart. It's actually not the first time I've met my sister, he said in a low voice. As if he was worried that what he said was not clear enough, he emphasized again, I mean the first time I chatted with my sister. Before we started to know each other in reality, I actually knew my sister. Rina Ishihara's body was trembling slightly when she heard these words, and then became slightly stiff. In fact, she already knew about it. However, considering that speaking out now, Asahi Kazuma will feel that her meeting with him was not a coincidence, but the result of her deliberate flattery, the sense of stability and happiness that we are linked by fate, it might be destroyed, so Ishihara Rina subconsciously didn't say anything. Now that he heard Asahi Kazuma say this directly, Ishihara Rina, who was placed on the bed by him, raised her head, and looked at Asahi Kazuma with her beautiful eyes, seeming to be waiting for him to tell her reasons. Asaba Kazuma took a deep breath and began to talk to Ishihara Rina about the concepts of adjusting genes, adjusters, and adjusting talents. In fact, for Asaba Kazuma, adjusting genes has never been something that necessarily needs to be hidden. As long as his career reaches a certain level, it doesn't matter even if people know that he possesses the adjustment gene, or even if he publicizes the adjuster's affairs to the whole world. Anyway, what he needs to hide is the golden finger of Kyunyulu, Love is War 2077. As for love simulations and the like, even to a certain extent, it is deduced that you will be known. If someone really knows, it will not be so scary. Aren't some of the big liars who are regarded by dignitaries as having very strong divination abilities still alive and well to this day? What really cannot be known is the ability to grow that Kyunyulu, Love is War 2077 has given him. Even the so-called predicting the future can be understood as an accurate prediction of future possibilities based on the current situation. But Kyunyulu, Love is War 2077 is a way of becoming stronger without any reason, which challenges human cognition. It was also Asaba Kazuma who knew enough about Ishihara Rina and had a clear grasp of her character. In addition, seeing her panic-stricken look now, he still missed a little bit. So, in the future you deduced, how many times have we met? Kinya Kazuma whispered, actually, I was already dead before I saw you at the beginning. As soon as he said these words, Ishihara Rina subconsciously touched the corners of his clothes. Why? She was so anxious that she almost cried. Although she was very sad today because she saw him dancing with other girls, she really didn't want anything to happen to him. In the future, I deduced, my sister would often secretly observe me through the windows and peepholes in the room. Seeing that Ishihara Rina's attention was attracted by other topics, he was not so sad for the time being. He hit the snake with a stick and said with a smile, "That time when I confronted the gangster in front of your house, he actually killed me once in the future that I recommended." Rina Ishihara bit her lower lip. Ah, so that's it? She had felt a little strange before, because Asahi Kazuma's hand operations were so smooth, as if she had been mentally prepared a long time ago and was ready to take action at any time. Now he confirmed her suspicions. However, this guess was not what she wanted to know. She almost lost him. Thinking of this possibility, Ishihara Rina's face turned pale. Qian Yufengjian let out a long sigh of relief. When it comes to love, sometimes it is not necessary to create a perfect image in the hearts of girls. Revealing a little bit of your embarrassing posture can actually arouse their anxiety and accelerate the increase of their good feelings. Some boys always think that if a girl encounters danger and they don't have the ability to choose to stand out, and some gangsters get injured without pain, they will think that they are embarrassed in front of girls. This is not the case at all. Most girls with normal thinking will only feel distressed and moved when they see a boy getting hurt because of her. Well, in the early stage, it won't really hurt yourself. Of course, this routine is only suitable for normal girls. If it is another punching creature that has wiped out all the avenues, I can only say that it is recommended to run as far as possible. Why bother? Neurosis is preoccupied with everything. Have you encountered many dangers? Ishihara Rina's eyes were full of worry. Qian Yufengjian smiled and spoke more truthfully, whether they are willing to do so or not. The future adjusters will cause huge waves in the entire world. The coquettishness of the times will drown everyone. They have the ability to deduce the future to a certain extent. There's no reason why I shouldn't rise to the challenge. Ishihara Rina pursed her lips and whispered. So you and her also met while deducing the future. Asahi Kazuma's brows jumped, feeling deeply that Rina Ishihara was not easy to fool today. But he had already been mentally prepared. If he didn't even have the courage to face the difficulties, why should he hold two lovers in his arms? So he said calmly, yes, actually when I first deduced the future, I always thought it was just a dream, but a more realistic dream caused by day-to-day thinking. So in the beginning I was pretty much freewheeling about the futures I recommended. But later I realized something was wrong. Many things in the dream had corresponding situations in reality. At that time, you and I, and Hyun, were deeply entangled, although you don't know this now. No, I know, wait, am I the only one who knows? Or, she whispered, is that pretty girl named Hyun? Asaba Kazuma nodded, yes, she and Akian, she, like her sister, has a marriage relationship with me in the future that I control. Asaba Kazuma reached out and brushed away Rina Ishihara's hair, revealing her pretty face, and he kissed her without hesitation. The kiss was like a warm breeze blowing on her face, spreading bit by bit on her face. She was still a little unhappy after all. She wanted to resist, but after meeting his clean eyes, after all, I still couldn't bear it, so I just let him do whatever he wanted. Fortunately, Chianyu Kazuma didn't completely faint. He knew his purpose tonight and said in a low voice, my sister looked really good in her wedding dress back then. He had a drunken look on his face, and that wasn't a lie. In the love simulation, Rina Ishihara is dressed in pure white, just like the perfect bride who walked out of a dream. His beautiful eyes reflected Ishihara Rina's appearance, which made Ishihara Rina's face feel hot. That look was too direct. Although she also had dream memories, dreams and reality were different after all. She still hadn't gotten used to Asaba Kazuma's intimacy until now. She felt like being with him, especially when he was in his arms. Her whole body was like hugging a little sun, almost melting herself. White chocolate under the hot sun often melts into soft and sticky chocolate syrup. This is the state she faces Asaba Kazuma in most of the time. Tell me about her, the girl named Shiina Kane. Kinya Kazuma shook his head, aren't you curious about the story of my sister and me? Ishihara Rina was a little confused. She lowered her head and said, for a boring person like me, my story with you must also be boring. Kinya Kazuma shook his head and said, no, that is a story that is more brilliant than the lilies blooming in spring. Having already talked about this, Asahi Kazuma doesn't mind saying more. He first talked about my own death experience in future deduction. Ishihara Rina subconsciously grabbed his hand, as if she was worried about him disappearing. Kinya Kazuma gently touched her little hand, comforting him that it was okay and everything was over. Well, by the way, I felt the soft little hands of my future wife. Sure enough, it's still so white and smooth. He then talked about her first death, where she lay in the coffin like Sleeping Beauty, and it broke her heart to see her. He said that at that time, he regarded her more as Lily's friend, a poor and beautiful girl who deserved to be saved. When he said this, Ishihara Rina's beautiful eyes were secretly looking at his expression and whispered. It turns out it was Lily who came first. Asaba Kazuma didn't expect Ishihara Rina's first reaction to be this, sister, what are you jealous of? In the several futures I have deduced so far, Lily-san and I have never had any excessive relationship. Asaba Kazuma? Rina Ishihara, tilts head. He suddenly remembered that he and Lily really had some impure relationship in the first simulation. It's just that because of those impure relationships, they are not instilled in the mind in the form of memory scenes, but only in the form of pure words. As time passed, he completely forgot that such a thing happened. However, there was no memory unfolding, so Asahi Kazuma just pretended that it didn't happen. It's impossible for someone to really conclude that he and Lily have some ulterior relationship just because of a charming text description. Anyway, Asaba Kazuma would not admit it, so in front of Rina Ishihara, he said shamelessly. The relationship between me and her is that no one can look down on the other as comrades in arms. Chianyu Kazuma is really qualified to say this. Lily's exotic style is actually not inferior to Ishihara Rina, but in reality, Asaba Kazuma and Lily really don't like each other. Not an enemy, just a female friend. Ishihara Rina thought about the experience between him and Lily, and finally nodded to express his understanding. She really couldn't imagine the kind of intimate interaction between her and Feng Jian between the two of them. And then Asaba Kazuma talked about the story of lilies outside the window. Ishiharina was stunned for a moment. She did have such an idea for a moment. After all, her friend Lily was really frustrated when her novel failed to pass submission, and she also thought about how to help her. It's just that whether in a dream or in reality, Lily has a smooth journey on the road to novels with the help of Kazuma. So this idea was discarded by her. I didn't expect Lily to be so aggressive at other times. She seemed to be able to think of her friend's embarrassment, and she laughed for a moment. Of course she wouldn't laugh if it happened. But now that Lily had begun to have some success, and knowing that she was almost in such a state of despair, she couldn't help but laugh. No, she would have been on the street for a long time without my help before. Finally, Asaba Kazuma talked about how he rescued her, how he went to find out the truth behind it, and then how the two got married under the spotlight. Asaba Kazuma looked at Ishiharina, and what came to mind was her shy and beautiful face in her white wedding dress. Attracted by his gaze, when Ishiharina looked at Asaba Kazuma, what came to her mind was the scene in her dream memory of him picking her up in his groom's clothes. For a moment, the two people who were immersed in memories showed a shy and unspeakable happiness on their faces. This is what my sister and I ended up deducing from the beginning. Ishiharina nodded, and then said stubbornly, "Tell her story." Asahi Kazuma. Sure enough, I still couldn't bring the topic to a close. Asaba Kazuma thought for a moment, but chose to pick up some of Shianayuin's stories and tell them to her. Of course, Asaba Kazuma made some adjustments. It just slightly skewed the relationship between the two. Thanks to the villain Professor Tatsuo Fujiki. Tatsuo Fujiki, who had been reported to the bureau by Asaba Kazuma, was ripped apart by Asaba Kazuma into KBFZ, who tried to use modified genes to become a living legend. In order to protect Ishiharina, Asaba Kazuma was forced to confront the villain Fujiki, and finally accidentally met another target who was almost persecuted. Out of justice, the great good Asaba Kazuma decided to save Shianayuin. And then he didn't dare to say any more. Ishiharina, who had finally comforted him, turned around and kicked him out. We've traveled through Tokyo. Who still wants to simulate love? Author, Fei Se Hui-Xiang. Chapter 152. Fujiki Tatsuo died miserably. He never thought in this life that he had been sent to prison by Asaba Kazuma, and he could still carry a big pot on his shoulders. Anyway, Asaba Kazuma's mood finally improved a little. After all, what he said was basically the truth. When the sixth master came, he dared to say that adaptation is not random fabrication, and detailed explanation is not nonsense. Ishiharina is a person who is easily self-satisfied. As she said, in fact, if Asahi Kazuma didn't care about her feelings and just wanted to keep her by his side, even if he didn't explain it and forced her a little more, he would be able to keep her. But Asahi Kazuma didn't want to. He hoped that she would be happy all her life, and that when she was with him, she could smile happily from the bottom of her heart, instead of being pitifully treated as a toy by him. In short, Asaba Kazuma's story was finally able to convince Ishiharina. Although she was in a complicated mood now, since Asaba Kazuma was still willing to talk to her properly instead of fooling her, Rina Ishihara reluctantly agreed. She is not the kind of willful girl, especially when she knew that during a certain future deduction, after completing the agreement with Asaba Kazuma, Shianakane danced solo in front of Asaba Kazuma's tombstone, and then shot herself. When she heard this ending, a sad look flashed in her eyes. Firstly, it was because her sweetheart was dead, and secondly, as long as it was brought to her, she would feel a dull pain in her heart just thinking about the days without Kinha Kazuma. And Shianauman has spent a long time enduring the pain of such separation. Ishihara even suspected that if she hadn't made an agreement with him, she might have followed him long after he left. It is impossible to say that she has no thoughts at all. But for such a love rival, at least in terms of loving him, she felt that Shianakane was worthy of respect. A thought even flashed through her mind. If she hadn't met him first, but Shianakane had met him first, would her story have ended before it began? This can also well explain why the story in reality is so different from what she remembers. Ishihara's little head was running at high speed. She didn't know that there was something outrageous in the world called a love simulator, and it was hard to imagine that Asahi Kazuma could find different heroines to accompany her through love simulations to live a wonderful and happy life. The future she understands is linear from beginning to end, rather than like a love simulator, where every heroine's choice is a new life. Under the influence of cognitive impairment, she made a misjudgment, but cleverly arrived at the correct conclusion. So there are such big changes in reality because you, like me, have dream memories and are actively interfering with the real story. Ishihara pouted. She admits that this love rival really loves her. Is this approach too much like a sneaky cat? The subtle error made Rina Ishihara never think that she was the one who was one step ahead. I wonder how far she and Kazuma have progressed. Rina Ishihara, who was nestled in Asaba Kazuma's arms, moved a little. Sniff sniff. Sniff sniff. There is no smell of fishy cats. Forget it, if he really likes it. Asahi Kazuma muttered in his sleep, seeming to be calling Ishihara's name. Ishihara finally closed her eyes and acquiesced to this result. As long as he's happy. The kind girl, even after knowing the truth, was still thinking about him. If Amamayamai knew about this, she would probably hate iron over steel, and then continue to despise Asaba Kazuma. It's just that Rina Ishihara didn't notice at all. When she sighed and closed her eyes and fell asleep, Asaba Kazuma, who had been mumbling in her sleep just now, quietly opened her eyes. His expression was a little complicated, but he just subconsciously hugged him tightly. This is his girl and he will never let her go. That night, both of them had a beautiful dream. In the dream, she is by your side. When I woke up again, it was already Sunday. Kazima. Ishihara gently pushed his back, get up and have breakfast. Let me sleep a little longer. How long? 5 minutes. 5 hours. No, get up and eat. If you don't eat breakfast, it will damage your liver. No, I want to sleep. Asaba Kazuma kept holding Rina Ishihara until late at night because of what happened yesterday. He was afraid that Rina Ishihara would sneak away from home if he was not careful, so that it was close to 6 a.m. before he could sleep peacefully. Today happened to be the weekend again, and he was already planning to stay in bed all day long, wasn't he? It took a lot of effort to get Ishihara to give up the idea of escape. Now he just wants to have a good sleep. Rina Ishihara pouted and probably guessed why he couldn't get up now. A smile subconsciously appeared on her lips. After a while, she came to the bedroom with breakfast on a tray. The breakfast she made today was a bacon and egg sandwich, and warm sweet milk was placed on the desk in her room. Seeing Kinya Kazuma turning sideways and sleeping soundly, she didn't go out, she just sat quietly in the room and looked at his back. Not long after, the sandwich got cold. Ishihara went downstairs again, heated the sandwich in the microwave again, then brought it up again, and gave him a gentle push. Don't go to sleep, go to bed after eating. The room was always filled with the aroma of bacon baking and the wheat aroma of bread. Asahi Kazuma had no choice but to get up with difficulty. Actually, it's okay to skip breakfast occasionally. If you can't get up, do you still have to keep eating it? Ishihara didn't speak, just watched Kinha Kazuma finish breakfast quietly. Then she said, the sandwich becomes too dry after being reheated twice, which makes it unpalatable. The implication is that she will make a new breakfast and serve it to him. "You're not angry anymore," Asaba Kazuma gently wiped Ishihara Rina's lower lip with her fingers covered in bread crumbs. Rina Ishihara stopped talking again. "Why don't you, sister, scold me?" Asahi Kazuma whispered a suggestion. He even tried to get a reward. I can't bear it," Rina Ishihara said softly. Chienyu Kazuma couldn't hold back. Who can refuse such Ishihara Rina? By the time he stopped, Ishihara Rina's lips were already red. You should sleep for a while first, you look very tired," Ishihara Rina said distressedly. Kinyu Kazuma sighed, "I'm afraid that my sister will run away secretly as soon as I fall asleep." "I won't run away," she said dully. If she ran away, Shianaki and Sneaky Cat would be able to monopolize her groom. As pure as Ishihara Rina, she had always been the kind of person who was the most considerate of others in the past, but who told her to meet the scoundrel Asaba Kazuma. She fell into it and couldn't leave. He was the only one she didn't want to give in to. After receiving Ishihara Rina's promise, Asahi Kazuma suddenly smiled, wiped her hands with the napkin on the table, and then carried her directly to the bed amidst Ishihara Rina's exclamations. "Then sister, just sleep with me for a while." Qian Yufengma rubbed her ear. Soon their breathing became even. However, what Ishihara Rina didn't know was that Asaba Kazuma was not sleeping at this time, but was silently looking at the panel of Kunyulu, Love is War 2077, and fell into deep thought. Sure enough, you still have to prepare in advance. The real use of Kunyulu should not be simply about falling in love. Whether it is to accumulate knowledge through love simulation, or to point out the direction for one's next move by deducing the future, it is more appropriate usage. Rina's side is relatively easy to deal with. After all, she always thinks about others, but Yuan's side may be a bit troublesome. Kinyu Kazuma thought in his heart. It's not that Yuan loves him less than Rina, but Rina's character makes her choose to compromise on some things. But he inside is different. Question: is he more sensitive than Rina? Answer: not as sensitive as Rina, but she is more proud than Rina. So for Asaba Kazuma, although there was a thunderstorm this time, luckily, Rina was the one who discovered the problem. If the person who discovered the problem first was Heian, then I'm afraid he wouldn't even be able to see Heian's face now. If you can't meet in person, you can't respond. If you can't give a response, it's easy to overthink and create gaps. In the end, there may be twists and turns that completely disrupt Asaba Kazuma's plan. More importantly, although Shiana Yuan's freedom is restricted to some extent by her parents, this does not mean that her parents don't love her. It can only be said that the Shiana couple are typical of the older generation who arrange their children's future from beginning to end. Couple. Shiana Yuan was able to hide the things in his heart before, because many things didn't really matter to him. A typical example is her studying medicine. It's not so much that Shiana Kane really likes studying medicine as it is that she likes the life of studying medicine with him by her side. This is also the deeper reason why she was unable to resolutely resist her parents' arrangements for a long time. Because although she doesn't like the violin that much, she hasn't found something she really likes. Because she doesn't care that much, it just doesn't matter. It's called broken for short. Her talent is destined to enable her to easily obtain abilities that others have dreamed of in their lives. Just like an author who writes a novel but lacks followers, it is a bit troublesome to expect to be particularly positive and happy without positive feedback. However, it was this lifestyle that shaped her heart. Continuously achieving successes that are difficult for others to achieve, Shiana Yuan is destined to be an extremely proud girl. Proud of her appearance and proud of her abilities, Shiana Kane with such a personality is not as easy to comfort as Ishihara Rina. After thinking for a long time, Kinyu Kazuma finally decided to use a big killer weapon. He plans to use the ability to deduce the future during the love simulation in Kunyulu, Love is War 2077 to find out if there is any way to safely get through the Shura field between two people. His eyes moved back and forth on the panel of Kunulu, Love is War 2077. As expected, let's simulate it and see if the Shura field will be more troublesome due to the outbreak later. When simulating Xianayuan's story, 3 simulation opportunities were consumed. It was not until last week that the system panel refilled the number of simulations. However, Kinha Kazuma was still digesting the remnants of the rewards from the previous simulation. He had no plans to start a new simulation until they were all digested. Secondly, the cultural festival incident left him a little exhausted both physically and mentally. He no longer plans to continue to have sweet comedies with his love simulation partner in the love simulation. He has not forgotten that the core reason why he chose to start a love simulation is to allow himself to develop faster, rather than to be immersed in love. If it weren't for Rina Ishihara and Yuine Shiina who made him feel so distressed, plus either Rina was in crisis, or he was in crisis. He may just treat it as an ordinary love game and play it, but it may not be so deep. He took a deep breath. Characters in dating simulations will have to be careful next time. He had no intention of finding a third person. But, what method should be used to avoid the advancement of the love plot? Asaba Kazuma thought for a moment and looked at the new simulation object. Name, Lily Garcia. Asaba Kazuma? No, why is it still you? Asahi Kazuma had no intention of choosing her. Riding on the head of Rina's best friend, do you really think that Rina has no temper? Not to mention that the relationship between him and Lily is more like best friends. He had no intention of going any further. Moreover, Asahi Kazuma has to do some love-breaking operations this time. Although there is absolutely no relationship between the love simulation and reality, Asahi Kazuma and Lily can be considered friends, so how can they bear to do something harsh? Then he looked at the other person. After a moment, a subtle yet cruel smile appeared on Asahi Kazuma's lips. Name, Maya Amamiya. Talent, overclocking moment, mind interference. Skills, proficient in fighting skills, proficient in gun skills, proficient in multiple languages, proficient in management, advanced aesthetics, intermediate investment and financial management. Qian Yufengma clicked on the overclocking moment, and the explanation of the pop-up entry was it can consume a large amount of physical energy in a short period of time, so that all its attributes can be temporarily improved and exceed its own limits. I clicked on psychic interference again, and the explanation of the pop-up entry was performing psychic interference on mentally weak people for a long time can affect the cognition of others to a certain extent. Asaba Kazuma looked at these talents of Amamiyamai with some astonishment. Obviously, these talents are also the ability to adjust genes, and to some extent, they are closer to the superpower level talents in the meaning of ordinary people's understanding. And these skills. This guy is good at too many skills, right? Is it the impact of overclocking time? This short-term improvement in attributes is probably a simultaneous improvement in the 3 attributes of intelligence, physical strength, and charm. If used well, it can indeed be regarded as my little trick to a certain extent, especially when the adjuster's own database is very high. For example, the 3 attributes of Asahi Kazuma's October 10, 11, one step higher and it has already reached the extraordinary level. However, this has nothing to do with me for the time being. Asaba Kazuma's expression was a little playful, even evil. His simulation this time was not in the direction of successfully completing the level. It was entirely to see the future development between him and the 2 women. Amamiya-kun, you almost messed up my plan, so I'll have to endure a little hardship on you in this love simulation. Kunyulu, let me see how bottomless you can be. Simulation unfolds. We've traveled through Tokyo, who still wants to simulate love? Author, Fei Se Hui-Xiang. Chapter 153. Simulation starts. During the simulation process, Please adjust your body angle and maintain a comfortable sleeping position. It has been a week since the incident occurred in Shura Field. During this week, your work, The Reincarnated Succubus, became popular all over the country due to jealousy from fellow companies. You were reported. The reason for the report was, some parents thought that the tail of the succubus was the X-organ. The male protagonist of the animation shows his tail, which is immoral. The regulatory authorities believe that the report is valid and require Reincarnated Succubus to change its name. The name of the animation cannot contain any hints of special sexual fetishes. You readily agree and backhand this matter out of the circle. Overnight, everyone in the animation industry knew that there was an animation that had its name changed due to outrageous censorship. The originally popular Succubus Reincarnated became known to animation fans around the world after this incident. At the same time, the discs and peripherals related to reincarnation of the succubus are making a lot of money. You have a treasure trove of past life memories and have chosen a few pieces of music that just match the animation. Even the singers of the animation music have become famous overnight. The room is booming. Now, after becoming famous in one battle, you are only qualified to be called a famous director, even if you have just directed the first animation. System prompt: you have unlocked the achievement name Supervisor Asahi Kazuma, achievement point add 1. System prompt: you have unlocked the achievement Music Genius, achievement point add 1. You are worried that the flames of war in the Shura Field will spread from Ishihara Arena to Shianakane. Originally, you could avoid these things for a short time, but because Amamiyamai made trouble for nothing, you are in a very embarrassing situation. You become so angry that you make up your mind to give her some good looks in the simulation. Because your subjective will is too strong, this round of simulation is forced to enter the fall line. Woohoo, I seem to have heard some interesting words. Although Asaba Kazuma had already predicted it, the gameplay of Kunulu, Love is War 2077 is actually closely related to reality and his current thoughts. He even discovered from the beginning that this type of option was already hidden in the dating simulation options. Whether it was becoming a bosozu at the beginning, or later developing a disharmonious relationship with the romantic female teacher, or even the option of directly attacking the editor-in-chief of Dengeki Bunko at that time, it actually shows that besides the normal game plot, there are still some unknown things. There are options on the table. I just didn't expect it to be so straightforward this time, so I fast-forwarded him to the line of degradation. Okay. Let me see what your new route is like. You decided to teach Amamiyamai a lesson, but Amamiyamai has a special status. The incident at the cultural festival playground let him know how unscrupulous the consortium can be in Japan. Just to allow Princess Genji to run on the playground, all members of the entire sports club running training can be kicked out of the playground for their own safety. You suspect that if you didn't already have a certain status, Amamiyamai didn't want to cause any trouble, so she didn't immediately drive you away while you were taking a nap. You didn't care about this before, but now that you want to take action against Amamiyamai, you have to consider those who protect her. After much thought, you decide to try something new and make her bow under your genes. You choose. Open up the channel of Shianakai's family, get close to her through her social circle, and then take action directly. Hit her hard with her grades, lure her to school, and then take action directly. Find a way to find the gangster, ambush her on the road she must pass, create chaos, and take her away directly. Free simulation. Good guy. Asahi Kazuma called him a good guy. None of these options are exempt from punishment. Is this the so-called fall line? Qian Yufengjian thought for a moment, wanting to see what kind of route he should choose to better help him guide the relationship between him and the two women in the Shura Field. As for Amamiyamai, who I do not recognize. Isn't he just a tool that I can use to improve my abilities and explore the future? He looked at the three options. The typical option is to use social circles to get closer and then take the initiative. The good thing is that in such a social circle, even Amamiyamai cannot have bodyguards follow her directly. Well, considering that it is the Genji group, a real consortium, it is normal even if bodyguards follow her. Of course, it's definitely not possible to have a large group of bodyguards following you like in Hakuin High School, so don't socialize. Asaba Kazuma calculated that according to the situation, there may only be 2 or 3 bodyguards who will be present at that time, or even there will only be one, and that is the female bodyguard who had been following Amamiya Mai on the playground. But this option has a very obvious disadvantage, that is, it is easy to burn the flames of war directly to Shianakane's family. After all, Asahi Kazuma entered the social circle through their channels. Even in the simulation, he is not so willing to do such bottomless things. At least it shouldn't be the first time you choose. He looked at option. Just looking at the options, the success rate of option should be quite high. Even the direct descendants of wealthy businessmen and consortiums will relax their vigilance relatively when entering the school. Because making wanton commotion in such a place is tantamount to directly challenging the authority of the Japanese government. Japanese students can be bullied in school, but if the consortium personally causes trouble in the school and gets kicked out, it will be a big trouble. Don't look at the cultural festival, where Amamiya Mai has so many bodyguards whenever she goes for a run, but in other places, Asaba Kazuma's chances of succeeding are even lower. Does this guy value grades so much? Qian Yufengjian was a little strange. The options for dating simulation are of great reference value. Since this option is given, it at least shows that Asaba Kazuma can surpass Amamiya Mai through her grades, and it is really possible to attract this eldest lady, whom she has not seen most of the time, to the school. But after Asaba Kazuma thought for a moment, he decided to choose option. The option is the most stupid option among all the options. Little gangster, heir to the consortium. The two words don't look like they go together at first glance. But how can I put it this time? Asaba Kazuma didn't want to push the progress of the love simulation at all. He just wanted to explore as much as possible the Shura field between Ishihara and Shiina Uman through the simulation. If possible, it is best to explore the future situation through simulation. From this perspective alone, Asaba Kazuma felt that option 3 was actually not that bad. As for the logic behind this, whether it is option or option, they are all aimed in the direction of not causing bad effects. Only option is aimed at making things worse. Forcibly introducing a foreign enemy who is full of malice towards him, and see if there will be a violent conflict between the two women when they find out that he has talked about 2 girlfriends despite the foreign enemy, that would be the most important. Decided, choose option. You privately arranged for people to issue commissions in the gangster circle, but you did not find those serious underworld forces, because you know very well that the black field of Japan is closely related to the 4 characters and the upper class. So you just entrusted those gangsters who can't really get into this industry. They are not professionals, and they don't have the ability to understand the situation of the Japanese consortium. It went very smoothly. You used cash to incite them. You spent a lot of money and quietly collected Amamiya Mai's route through the channels of mold. One afternoon, when it was raining in the sky, after Amamiya Mai's bodyguards parked their car, the gangsters who had been arranged for them swarmed over them instantly. After reacting, Amamiya Mai's bodyguards directly stepped forward to fight with them. Stand up. The scene unfolds. Miss, leave this place of wrong first. The female bodyguard looked at the chaotic scene with a dark face, protecting Amamiya Mai and preparing to leave. However, before taking a few steps, he bumped into the second group of gangsters coming over. Without saying a word, the female bodyguard rushed forward and started fighting with the gangsters to the death. Miss, please leave first. Amamiya Mai had no intention of staying and immediately turned around and ran towards the outside of the parking lot. However, the gangster following closely behind her made her furious and created a deep crisis. She didn't even have time to take off her high heels. Once she takes it off, the gangsters behind her will chase her directly. Amamiya Mai had no intention of getting into close contact with them, so even though she was in better shape than these scumbags, She still couldn't get rid of them. But she wasn't too worried. When we ran outside to the main road, there were more people, and even the gangsters had to worry about the impact. Give her a few seconds to take off her high heels, and she can beat the pursuer down. However, as he was about to reach the exit of the parking lot, several more gangsters who were ambushing in front rushed over. Amamayamai's silver teeth were almost broken. She couldn't figure out who was targeting her. With such a low-end operation, wouldn't she worry about retaliation? It is true that business wars in recent years have become more and more unpretentious, but it is still outrageous to be so unpretentious. At this moment, she saw a familiar figure walking out from the door of the small shopping mall with a handbag in hand. Her eyes lit up. "Asaba Kazuma, help me, someone is chasing me." At this time, Asaba Kazuma came out, raised his head and looked at Amamayamai, who was trotting not far away, and was a little surprised for a moment. It's really impressive to be able to run at such a speed while wearing high heels. However, everything is in his calculation. He deliberately frowned and put down his handbag. "You even only called me by my name and were not willing to call me Kinyu-san." He was carrying a bag, but he didn't even wait for Amamayamai to call his classmate, and rushed forward without hesitation. "Do you know what 10 points of physical strength and nerve reflex strengthening are? The effect of combining the two is that as long as Kinha Kazuma is willing to do mental arithmetic and not careful, he can easily count 10 when he starts using his hands. There is no skill at all, it all depends on reaction speed." Amamayamai, who had just taken off her high heels and was about to go back to support Asaba Kazuma, looked at the gangster lying on the ground with a somewhat embarrassed expression. The high heels she had taken off from her left foot was still in her hand. For a moment, she didn't know whether to directly put it down or put it back on. "Thank you, if you hadn't suddenly appeared, I wouldn't have known what to do." Kinyu Kazuma slowly walked towards her and said helplessly, "Your life is really wonderful, hum." The moment Asaba Kazuma approached, Amamayamai's eyes suddenly became sharp and she attacked him directly. She was completely heading in the direction of killing her. There was no thought of staying behind. She saw Asaba Kazuma's surprised expression, and a hint of ridicule. The alarm bells sounded loudly, and she immediately wanted to retreat. But it was too late. Because before she retreated, Asaba Kazuma had already arrived first and punched her directly on the vagus nerve. Being well prepared, he effortlessly knocked out Amamayamai. Really, no sympathy at all. This. As he said, if he is willing and has 10 points of physical strength combined with enhanced nerve reflexes, he is almost invincible in close combat. Even Professor Fujiki, who had a glimpse of the large hybrid adjusted gene in Shianauman's previous simulation, had obviously exceeded 10 points in physical strength, but he was still easily subdued by Asaba Kazuma. Strengthening of nerve reflexes is really the #1 magic weapon for defeating the weak against the strong. How to make Amamayamai intoxicated? The answer is to directly hit the vagus nerve in the jaw, causing her head to buzz and lose consciousness. After close contact, Amamayamai was subdued by Yu followed the previously arranged route and took Amamayamai directly to a little-known house. This house used to be the hidden residence of Tatsuo Fujiki later. After Tatsuo Fujiki was secretly reported by Yu, this house was inspected. It is said that it will go through the legal auction process in a while. Yu decided to make full use of the remaining value of this thing and took the unconscious Amamayamai directly to the basement. As the door closed, the girl's nightmare began. Asaba Kazuma felt his scalp numb for a moment. Is this what is called fallen mode? Everyone is not a saint. Even those who are as pure and kind as Chienyu Kazuma will occasionally have some thoughts that cannot be considered in detail. However, these ideas directly became a reality in the fall line. As the scene unfolded, memories poured in, and what appeared in Asaba Kazuma's eyes was a somewhat subtle scene. Amamayamai did not remain unconscious for long. Asaba Kazuma was very aware of the severity when he struck. Hitting the vagus nerve was not an acupuncture point in a martial arts novel. It could directly render her unable to move or even cause her to fall into coma on the spot. So Amamayamai soon woke up and looked at Asahi Kazuma with fierce eyes like a female leopard. "Asaba Kazuma, you are really crazy." Qian Yufengjian smiled and said, "Maybe I am really crazy. After all, I was almost pulled into the whirlpool by you for no reason. It didn't matter that you didn't call me classmate, but you actually attacked me directly. You really thought I didn't tempered." This time Qian Yufengjian made a complaint. It was obvious that the villain was the first to complain. He found the person, but he would not admit it even to death. Amamayamai sighed and said resignedly, "What do you want to do by locking me in this basement? Who invited you here?" Kinyo Kazuma sneered and said, "No one invited me over. It can only be said that it is because I am really angry." Amamayamai looked at him unreasonably and said, "You are really a madman. Thank you for the compliment. Are you done? Then we can start." Asaba Kazuma calmly took out a prop. It was the obedience collar he had exchanged from the item inventory at that time. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. We've traveled through Tokyo. Who still wants to simulate love? Author, Fei Se Hui-Xiang. Chapter 154. Amamayamai really thought this man was crazy. Is he not afraid of death? The consortium will not talk to you morally. To be honest, if we were not in a modern society, everyone would still care about some face and do not want to make themselves notorious. The Japanese consortium can completely let the Japanese people feel a little like Xiao Ziba next door. The consortium was shocked. The premise of all this is that the opponents of the consortium themselves are still observing order. When he met an unreasonable guy like Asaba Kazuma, did he really think that he wouldn't take revenge with all his strength after humiliating him in the small basement? No matter who is standing behind you, you'd better pray that I don't get out of here alive, otherwise you're dead. I already dare to do this, are you still worried that I will die? Kinyo Kazuma showed what could be called a gentle smile, but that smile was so chilling to him. Amamayamai tried hard to break away, but she heard a sound of the chain shaking. She looked at Kinyo Kazuma in shame. If this person really wanted to take action, it would be fine. She would treat it as a bite from a dog, but this iron chain. The bad premonition in her heart became stronger. "Where is this place?" Amamayamai whispered. The corners of Asahi Kazuma's mouth raised slightly, and his words became weird. "This is a new world for the two of us." Amamayamai lowered her voice and said, "You handcuffed me, you are too merciless. Can you let me move my hands? I won't resist." When she said this, her voice had a pitiful tone. Asaba Kazuma scratched his head and said, "There's nothing we can do about it. Of course it's to deepen our understanding of each other, Amamiya-san." "Understand?" Amamiyamai's alarm bells started ringing. "Yes, I understand. Amamiya-san was too wary of me and caused me a lot of trouble, so I decided to use some tricks to help you and me." Asaba Kazuma held the obedience collar in her hand, and despite her shaking her head to resist, she successfully put it on Amamiyamai's neck. Amamayamai showed an expression of shame and anger. Kinyo Kazuma was secretly amused. His actual intention was to say, "This love simulation will prevent me from provoking you. This will help you and use you to make me a big enemy to simulate the situation in the Shura field after Rina and Hien. This I'm helping myself." Who would have thought that after I thought about these words in my mind, I would feel so strong after saying them? But this seems to be very interesting. I have never played a role in a love simulation before. Why don't you learn to be an actor this time and free up your instincts? After all, things like "hey, it's a bad thing, there's a risk" cannot be related to people like Amamayamai. Just do it. Anyway, Asaba Kazuma didn't want to add any more girlfriends. In order to avoid being affected by the love simulation story, she might as well just break through the bottom line. It won't affect reality anyway, right? Don't worry, nothing will happen, he said with a smile. If he really wanted to kill her, the simulation would end immediately. The underlying logic of Asaba Kazuma's execution of options was not to end the story. So, why did you bring me here? Amamiyamai's voice was calm. You talk too much. Kinya Kazuma turned around and put the silver rose-patterned eye patch that she had worn on her head. The tight-fitting blindfold made her world go dark at this moment. Amamiyamai seemed to realize that Asahi Kazuma's purpose was not to kill him, so she tried a few more words when chatting with him, and Asahi Kazuma calmly replied to her some words. She then asked in a low voice, Kinya Kazuma, you don't really want to kill me, do you? I don't know what my opponent did to make you choose to do this to me, but you don't want to kill me, you just want to wait. Let me go someday. When are you going to let me go back? After putting on the eye mask, she could see things outside and felt that her surroundings were very peaceful. It was so calm that I couldn't even hear my breathing. At this time, there was only her voice in the room, and there was no reply from the other person at all. She was a little scared for a moment. Hey, are you still there? Let's talk. Kinya Kazuma still didn't speak. Amamiyamai couldn't see anything, and she wasn't sure whether Asaba Kazuma had left. She always felt that she seemed different from usual today, as if she had become a little more fragile. Is it because the blindfold was put on and the vision was taken away? Asaba Kazuma watched quietly as Amamiyamai's face showed an increasingly uneasy expression. The silver rose pattern eye mask is a good tool for developing and adjusting genes for people like Hien who have special hearing talents. But for Amamiyamai, who was kidnapped by Asaba Kazuma and couldn't calm down at all, it was pure mental torture. Asaba Kazuma didn't pay any attention to her. Amamiyamai's talent, coupled with her own fighting proficiency, if it were an ordinary person, she might be killed in a matter of seconds. But Asaba Kazuma's nerve reflexes are strengthened, which restrains her ability the most. After all, to a certain extent, the strengthening of neural reflexes can be directly linked to the fighting instinct. Some people cannot learn the killing skills in their lifetime, but for those with enhanced nerve reflexes, it is just a matter of watching them a few times. You don't even need to remember it in your brain, just leave it to your own powerful reflex nerves. Perhaps because of his intention to obey the caller, Asaba Kazuma clearly felt that Amamiyamai's firm tone was softening over time. Chienyu Kazuma, tell me, what do you want to do? Amamiyamai's voice echoed in the basement. Asaba Kazuma knew that she didn't really want to ask what she wanted to do. It was just the darkness in her eyes and the panic caused by the claustrophobic environment that made her eager to talk to someone. Seeing that her tone finally softened, Asaba Kazuma put down her phone and stepped forward to lift her chin, revealing her face with gritted teeth. He said calmly, if you want me to talk to you more, it depends on your performance. What? I said, it depends on how well Amamiya-san performs, otherwise why should I reward you? You call this a reward? Amamiyamai said bitterly. Do you have to leave you alone in the basement for a day or two? When you come back, I'm afraid you won't be able to get your clothes or pants anymore. You can't ask me to help you clean it up, right? Asaba Kazuma really doesn't deserve to be a human being. In Amamiyamai's impression, this classmate's smile was still very gentle, but she really couldn't stand the scumbag's behavior. In other words, when she saw such things, she would always think of her own inability to control her lower body through him. Irresponsible dad. So the anger suddenly came up. Who would have thought that I would be imprisoned by this guy somewhere? What exactly do you want me to do? That's up to you to understand. Do you understand yourself? Or are you saying that Miss Amamiyamai can't wait any longer? Amamiyamai pursed her lips, could this guy just do it for sex? Where did the devil come from who gave up his life for sex? She regretted a little. If she had known that she would encounter something like this, at least she could have looked better when facing him before. Maybe it gave him some hope that he could catch up with her, and he wouldn't provoke this person to take risks and let himself end up like this. But Kinha Kazuma's words in the next second gave up her idea. Don't have so many colored wastes in your mind. Apart from that, have you thought about why I want to arrest you? Amamiyamai raised her head. Obviously she couldn't see him, but it was as if she was still maintaining her proud persona of a young lady. I can't remember, we don't have any deep hatred. Anyway, let me out quickly. You're panicking. Amamiya-san would usually give orders arrogantly. So, let me give you a little hint. Think about it carefully. Wait a minute, please stop it. I've already said that we don't have any deep hatred. On the day of the cultural festival, I told you that I never hunted your mother. Think about it again, and miss, you have already lost your composure. In the darkness, Amamiyamai seemed to hear Asaba Kazuma's footsteps approaching. With a tearing sound, she subconsciously let out a scream. If you can't control your mouth anymore, it won't be such a small reward. Can't keep your mouth shut? She seemed to understand something in a daze, but she felt a little unbelievable. Is that really the reason? Qian Yufengjian clicked his tongue in wonder, as if he was looking at her body. His tasteful words made her scalp tingle. She only heard him say, "Someone was bored and disrupted my original plan, so I was very unhappy." Amamiyamai finally came back to her senses. A trace of confusion flashed in her eyes. It was really because of that incident. There was a look of pain on her face. Also, maybe she just wanted to save a girl who was targeted by a scumbag. It seems that you finally remembered that your behavior caused me a lot of trouble. Since you want to be sincere to that girl, Ishihara, then why tear it apart? Amamiyamai felt a little cold in her upper body, and her coat was torn. I don't understand what's going on with them, but you can't understand either. How can you understand now that I've never been in danger? You cooperated with that bastard, Amamiyamai said in shock, with a little anger in her voice. I said, how dare you attack me directly, Asaba Kazuma, I warn you, you have been deceived. Yeah, that guy always likes to play with people's hearts. Do you think they can really protect you? Asahi Kazuma's sneer came over. Amamiya-san, have you misunderstood something? I said you don't need protection, you don't need to rely on others at all. His voice became deeper and deeper, and even Amamiyamai's heart was pulled into the abyss. Aren't you guys been researching on adjusting genes? But have you really understood the upper limit of genetic modification? No. Maybe the limit of what you can understand is just the 2 adjustment genes in you that are almost superpowers. Overclocking moments and psychic interference, right? To some extent, it is close to a genetic talent with superpowers, but it is still far behind compared to me. Asaba Kazuma was not joking. Although the adjustment genes he currently possesses, his single genetic talent does not have such a big advantage compared to Amamiyamai. But he can always absorb new adjustment genes. With the gene codex, he only needs to prepare the genetic adjustment reagents and borrow the blood of other adjusters to make materials, and he can continue to obtain adjustment genes. And there is no need to go through the rewards of Kyunulu, Love is War 2077. However, the number of genes he can accommodate is relatively limited. Judging from his Enhian's final research results, it can perfectly accommodate at least 20 or more types of adjustment genes. He didn't want to use the extra bits on genes he didn't need so much. But this was not the reason for him to say such arrogant words. Because after obtaining the scientific research memories of him and her in the future, especially the research and development memories of the gene codex, he was shocked to discover he obviously only has 5 adjustment genes: nerve reflex strengthening, shaping, color sensitivity, absolute pitch sense, and educated memory, but after being injected with the gene codex, 7 of them were occupied. Genetic location. At this moment, he finally understood that he might have possessed 2 unknown special genes all along. Thinking about it this way, he seemed to understand many things that he had not thought about. The so-called Cunulu, Love is War 2077 is probably just a composite of 1 or 2 of the adjusted genes. For example, with the ultimate mathematical talent and particle motion perception, is it possible to calculate the state of particle motion to predict the future? Of course, Asahi Kazuma couldn't tell. Without the help of the golden finger of Kun Jade record, he would not even be able to intuitively feel the talent of the simulated object. In the real world, trying to do this requires constant trial and error. Many people may not be able to discover their talents throughout their lives, and thus miss out. Asahi Kazuma himself naturally didn't know what the situation was. However, he now believes more and more that his golden finger is essentially the product of his own adjustment of his talent. Don't come over, Amamiyamai couldn't see anything, and her movements were restricted by him, so she couldn't resist at all. This unprecedented feeling of weakness was something she rarely experienced as she had never stopped practicing martial arts. She couldn't see that the collar around her neck was emitting a faint light. The strong resistance caused by being restricted by Asahi Kazuma is being continuously weakened by some unknown force. The fragile posture in that moment made Kinha Kazuma take a deep breath. Damn it, is this the fall line? His fingertips slowly traced across Amamiyamai's body. He didn't really like this girl before. No, in fact, he didn't feel that way now, but he had to say that her posture made him feel a strong desire to ravage and destroy her. It felt like he was playing Terraria and couldn't get the Star Fury equipment, and then one day, he suddenly got a Star Fury. Just like now. He successfully used the most unethical method in a dating simulation to obtain a living Star Fury equipment. His breath caught for a moment, and he finally laughed. Amamiyamai didn't know what he wanted to do, but she still felt a strong sense of crisis. She was actually right. Because. Anyway, I don't want to add any more girlfriends. I can just play around with the remaining simulated objects and harvest my talents. Why should I be a gentleman? Yes, this is just a game. In the love simulation, he is the 4th natural disaster who can be resurrected infinitely. He no longer intends to use his sense of morality to suppress his interest in playing games. We've traveled through Tokyo, who still wants to simulate love? Author, Fei Se Hui-Xiang. Chapter 155. We are already playing games, there is no need to be harsh and serious. Players of P Club are still war criminals per capita, so we can't just say that everyone in this group of players needs to hang streetlights, right? Just play with a little butter. One thing to say is that Asahi Kazuma seriously doubts whether the future setting of Cunulu, Love is War 2077 is used to relieve the mental pressure of those adjusters who do not want to have children. His eyes looked at Amamiyamai again. He chuckled, Amamiya-san, be mentally prepared. I have no interest in pushing the progress bar of the task this time. Playing games without being bound by morality is really hot. Amamiyamai's body trembled, and her legs came together uneasily. She could clearly feel the evil intentions in Kinha Kazuma's laughter. In the past, when she was kidnapped, she never showed such uneasiness. At that time, she could still argue with the kidnappers with gritted teeth, and even secretly caused a little trouble for them, and finally escaped safely. But why this time, why does it seem that there is less courage? It's a pity that she couldn't understand the working mechanism of the obedience collar. Asahi Kazuma could vaguely feel that after wearing the obedience collar, Amamiyamai's teeth gnashing at the beginning gradually turned into confusion, and then slowly, she became as proud as she was. I actually feel that if I give in a little bit, there won't be any problem. During the whole process, she didn't notice anything wrong. But Asahi Kazuma did notice something. The props of this system are not so much directly distorting people's cognition, but rather inducing the emotions hidden deep in others' hearts. As someone who writes novels and draws comics, he knows this all too well. Why do many online novel authors always like to start coding at night? It's not just that you want to catch fish and start updating at the last minute, but the secretion of human hormones can easily cause a person to have more emotions in the dead of night. This is the so-called network suppresses the cloud. Not every cultural and creative worker can use words and pictures to express rich emotions, so many people are more accustomed to creating directly when inspiration comes at night, when they are dreaming about teenage things late at night. You are still the same person, but your mood is different due to physical effects. The same is true for MaleProtagonist now. That weakness and obedience didn't come out of nowhere, it was induced. Maybe it was also because he blindfolded her, making her more anxious. Gradually, her voice took on a crying tone. Why do you do this? If I dissatisfied you, I apologize. Asahikazuma randomly found a reason, to eliminate the emotional gap. She just felt the dangerous aura, and her body felt a little shy and wanted to retreat, but the chains restricted her movements. Estrangement? What estrangement? Her mind was in a mess, and she instinctively thought of some scenes that she couldn't describe in detail. But she felt inexplicably that something really happened. As long as he didn't really want her life, it seemed, it wasn't that difficult to accept. Amamiyamai, are you crazy? Aren't you the one who hates people who are two-pronged? Is it just because they look better? Amamiyamai instinctively felt that this shouldn't be the case. It's not like she's never seen a beautiful boy before, even if she's prettier than Asabakazuma, she's never. Amamiyamai thought for a moment. It seems that she has never seen a better looking boy than Asabakazuma. Appearance is just as has happened to me. She didn't want to believe this fact. Otherwise, it will be like being eaten by a dog. Although she had just said just treat it like a dog chewed it before, but now that this thought appeared in her mind, her mood seemed to be a little different. From disgust to barely tolerable? If Asabakazuma knew about the changes in her heart, I'm afraid her evaluation of the obedience collar would be even higher. Maybe even. Ahem, judging from his declining moral sense, he is really being pushed into a hurry. He might consider whether there is a chance to use obedience collars on Rina and Yuan. Of course, he was definitely not the one using the collar. He is here to find a wife. Maybe try having Rina and Uman hold props for each other and use them on each other. Use system props to stage a conjugation of master and servant. Maybe you don't even need a love simulation, you can just beat it directly. However, Asahikazuma didn't have the ability to read minds, so naturally he couldn't use props. He reached out and touched Amamiyamai's face. Her body trembled, but she refrained from taking action. I only heard him say. I originally wanted to eliminate the barriers between me and them, but now it seems that it is better to eliminate the barriers with Amamiya-san first, otherwise Amamiya-san will not understand. Kinya-Kazuma held her hand with surprisingly strong force, making it difficult for her to move. Contrary to what I expected, you didn't react at all, or Amamiya-san, are you also expecting something? Please, let me go back now. I won't get involved in the messy affairs between you two lovers anymore. Amamiyamai lowered her head and begged. You want to go home? I thought that a consortium like yours, which exists in the form of a family, would not have the concept of loving each other and being a family. Asahikazuma slid his fingers down slightly. Her fingertips could feel a touch on her skin through her clothes. She tried hard to hold back the uneasy trembling in her body and tried to pretend to be obedient. But when she heard Asabakazuma say love each other and become a family, her body became inexplicably still. Her original weakness gradually disappeared, and a slightly sarcastic smile appeared on her face. You're absolutely right about this. Being born in a consortium means that you don't have the right to choose family relationships. I can't imagine that the money my father has received from the family fund in this life can be used by the following people, and he won't be able to spend it all. Aren't you the same? If you have a little money, you start to have two boats. Kinya Kazuma said sternly, "Don't talk nonsense, I will accompany them too even when I have no money." "Does that mean you admit that you are in two different situations?" Amamaya sneered. "I don't know if you have two legs, but I know you are very naughty, my Amamaya." Asayu Kazuma's fingertips slid down her slender throat. He unbuttoned his shirt one by one. Asaba Kazuma chuckled and said, "You'd better not expect anyone to save you. The button locator on your body, the pen cap locator, the ring that can twist out the blade, and the pocket pistol hidden under your skirt have all been destroyed." "I lost it?" Amamaya Mai's body paused for a moment, and suddenly she started struggling violently. You guy. Why are you angry?" "Ah, I understand." Asaba Kazuma tightly restricted Amamaya Mai's movements, and he could clearly feel the amazing force that Amamaya Mai exploded under him. "You must know that Asaba Kazuma has a height advantage, and she has reached 10 points of physical strength without any blind spots. In this way, under Amamaya Mai's sudden explosion, she almost failed to restrain her. Qian Yufengjian said with a smile. "You're wrong. This is where you should stay, Amamaya-san." Asaba Kazuma said, her hands restlessly moved around Amamaya Mai's body. For a moment, her movements were twisting and turning, and Asaha Kazuma's shirt, which had no defensive effect on her, hung on her body like a rag. Amamaya Mai was so embarrassed and angry. You. Asaba Kazuma didn't pay any attention to her thoughts. He might still be thinking that the game Kyunyulu, Love is War 2077 is indeed not serious. The gameplay of Fallen Line is really too punishing. But whether he should say it or not, this kind of breaking through the lower limit of morality always gives him a subtle experience of betrayal. In particular, Amamaya Mai's little wildcat-like movements and her explosive temper like a female leopard add even more flavor to this gameplay. "Go on if you want, and get out as soon as you're done," Amamaya Mai said through gritted teeth. "Don't worry, it's game time now. Today we are playing an inappropriate relationship. No, it should be more like a master and a servant. After all, you are still wearing a collar." Asaba Kazuma was in a rage, but Amamaya Mai gritted her teeth and said, "You don't really think about me at all, so why do you take the initiative to provoke me?" "Probably so that you can play the game more happily, right?" Asaha Kazuma hesitated and said. He wasn't lying, he was really treating her like a game. "You caught me here just to play games," Amamaya Mai tried again. "What kind of crazy comments do you really regard reality as a game?" Kinya Kazuma smiled and said, "Do you still remember what I said to you when you woke up just now? Do you know what my talent for genetic adjustment is?" "It's about deducing the future," Asaba Kazuma said with a smile. "For me, the experience of locking you here now is just the result of controlling variables under my conscious choice." Amamaya Mai was stunned. You. So you should have figured it out. For me, everything I do now is just a dream for me to deduce the future. What is this if not a game? I made different choices in the process of deducing the future this time, such as locking you up, which triggered a different future. For me in the past, this kind of thing was just a kind of thing. Possibility. So I am indeed not afraid of death." Amamaya Mai suddenly woke up. Even though she was still wearing an eye patch, she screamed in disbelief, "How could there be such a genetic talent in this world? Before I met you, I never thought about seeing anything else." "Amamaya-kun, you have a talent close to superpowers, don't you? It seems that you have already figured it out." "I will always be on the right path. As for now, you can understand that if you deduce the future too many times, you will feel tired. You have to deduce a lawless route to ease the stress of deducing the future. Take the pressure. Asahi Kazuma didn't lie. The number of love simulations is actually very sad. Asahi Kazuma sometimes wonders if he continues to explore a path of redemption in repeated timelines like he did with Rina and Yuine before. That really drives people crazy. Especially when he introduced the future, the huge pressure of knowing that he would die in the future has flowed into his heart along with the memory of the love simulation. This is also the reason why he still hasn't started a new simulation even though several weeks have passed and the number of original simulations has been accumulated. He was really scared. Amamiyamai was not silent for a while. She seemed to finally understand why this guy's attitude was so cynical. For you, this is a deduction of the future, but for me, it is the real present. Don't you have any shame in doing this? She finally understood. Asahi Kazuma may not really have such a bad character, but when he treats other people's reality with a game attitude, he is simply trampling on all the rules of the world. Just like how chaebols and financial groups deal with ordinary people, when you already have the ability to trample on others at will, even if you occasionally go too far, those people will not feel guilty. Some people even take it for granted and enjoy it. Kinya Kazuma shook his head. Amamiyamai still doesn't understand. Although he borrowed Kunyulu, Love is War 2077 to deduce the future, it does not mean that he cannot distinguish between the future and reality. The word game that kept popping up in the dating simulation told him the truth all the time. So, it's really just a game. As if aware of Asahi Kazuma's ridicule, Amamiyamai finally collapsed and begged. You, please let me out now. I swear on my name, Amamiyamai, that I will not mention this matter to anyone. Anyone? Well, whether it's father, the Metropolitan Police, your parents, or classmates, I will keep the secret, so please unchain it, okay? If you need me to help you, I will definitely find a way to help. Are you threatening me? Huh? Threat? Has anyone ever told you, Amamiya-san, that every time you talk to someone, you act like a thorny hedgehog, eager to prick people? No. It's not like that. Do you like me? Qian Yufengjian didn't speak. Then don't let me do anything annoying or weird. Hey. Amamiya-kun, do you hate doing strange things? Who would like to do this with strangers? But now it's an inappropriate relationship. What, I didn't admit it? The police will come. Police? Yeah, so let me go home quickly. It will come, the Japanese police are very powerful. Do you believe this? The arrest rate is declining year by year. It's already a waste of money. Do you still think that if you kidnap me, no one will find out? You may have a misunderstanding. If the purpose of kidnapping is not blackmail, and you don't contact your family, the probability of being discovered will be further reduced. That will become a big event and appear directly on the news. There are so many missing people across the country every year, but the Metropolitan Police Department has not found many. Liar, liar, if my father uses his power, yes. The situation of the UN family will definitely make them go all out. In other words, without the pressure from the Genji group, they won't go all out, right? It really smells like money. It is worthy of the Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department. If you are targeted by the Metropolitan Police, you will become a prisoner. But this is just a game, Kinya Kazuma said with a smile.